Okay. Apologies for that. I clicked to go live, and then I ended up needing a pee. So yeah, just my luck here. Let me get comfortable. I was sitting here all comfortable, ready to do this. Realised I needed a pee. So yeah, I jumped over. 1 second, guys. My couch is actually broken, so the bit that I like to sit at to do these videos, it actually hurts the left side of my arse. That's why in my last live stream, because I went like 5 hours, you saw me like fidgeting constantly and moving around a lot because it actually was making my arse numb sitting there for that long. It's kind of annoying actually. But yeah, how's it going, guys? Nice wee cup of tea in my new Pac-Man cup, like that. I actually won that at a thingy, one of them amusements. I won it. So yeah, all right, where are we? Yeah, how's it going, Jamie? Good to see you here, man. Good to see you. Apology. Good to see you, man. God bless you. So this is no longer a boxing channel. Well, it was never really a boxing channel. I mean, it was always my personal channel where I talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. It just so happened that I was into boxing, so and I guess my audience was generally a boxing audience, but it was never really like I never really like fully classified it as a boxing channel. I don't really think that was ever my intention with it. Yeah, how's it going, Owen? God bless you, man. Yep. How your couch broke? Well, basically, what happened was like this couch, someone actually gave it to us, but it turned out it was too big for this living room. Like, because the living room's not that big, but the couch is massive. So like, I had to really squeeze it in. So sometimes when I go to get something from the other side of the room, I've actually got to stand on the couch. So I ended up standing on it, and then one of the like wooden boards, because like the interior of it's wooden underneath the leather is like broken down, so the stuffing is like stuffed down the side of the couch. So basically when I sit on the bit in the middle, which is the bit I like to sit on when I watch TV and that, and or like play my games or whatever, and I like to sit at this bit when I do my live streams, it actually hurts the left side of my arse when like I could sit at another pot, but I don't know. I like sitting here for some reason. It's a nice spot, it's my spot. Looking forward to what's to come. Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, it should be a lot of stuff. There still will be boxing videos. It's just, again, I was never really a boxing channel. I was never a boxing channel. Not really, anyway. Yeah, how's it going, reverse? Did you see the owner of Halo is really based? Not surprising if you think about it. I didn't know that. No, do you mean like the original writer or creator? Is that what you mean? Because I don't even know much about them. I'll need to look into that. But yeah, I wasn't aware of that. No, I have played the Halo games though. I played the original three, like the original trilogy. Halo, Halo 3 is the best one by far. And I love Halo. I think Halo 3 is a masterpiece. Like that game is. I'm not going to say it's underrated because everybody likes it, but I do think it's really, really good. Like it's better than any shooter that's come out in the past decade, in my opinion. I'll argue that with anybody. I guess I'll ask one boxing question for the stream. What are your thoughts on Howard Foster defeating Parker by? Yeah, I was going to say congratulations to Howard Foster on his exceptional TKO victory over Parker. Yeah, it's a shame for Wardley, because Wardley couldn't really get the job done. He got kind of outboxed. He gave it a good go, but he wasn't able to accomplish it in the end. But Howard Foster, man, got to give a lot of credit to Howard Foster. That guy had a spectacular victory. Defeating Parker, that was impressive. I mean, who would have thought? Saying that he was able to defeat George Groves as well. Anything goes except yeah. Just for this live, I don't really want to talk about boxing with this live. Thoughts on Zach Polanski? Who's that? Like the name rings a bell, but I don't know who that is. Who's Zach Polanski? Definitely heard the name. I just don't recall. I'm sure you'll remind me. Oops, oh, you mean the music composer who's running for yeah, do you know the Halo sound that doesn't surprise me at all, like, the soundtrack for the original Halo games was badass, like, they were badass, awesome. Yeah, yeah, I love the music for the original Halo games. I particularly like do you know the bit in Halo 3 when you drive the Warthog on top of that big ship while everything's just, like, destroying around you? I think the soundtrack in the background of that level's badass. It is. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Howard Foster's becoming the Howard Webb of the box. He'll be getting into the pound for pound top 10 list at this rate. Yeah, I mean, he stopped George Groves, he stopped Joseph Parker. You know, Howard Foster. You got to give that guy credit, man. I mean, again, I know it sucks for Wardley that he wasn't able to get the win, but Howard Foster, man, like, yeah, Howard Foster's a badass, being able to stop Joseph Parker. Like, they should give Howard Foster that WBO interim belt and give him a shot at Usyk. That's what they should do. Howard Foster versus Usyk in 2026. That'd be badass. Always the new leader of the Green Party. Yeah, I don't actually, I don't follow the Green Party. I just, as far as I'm concerned, they're all a bunch of furries, a bunch of nonces, a bunch of wrong'uns. And yeah, the Green Party should just be executed, as far as I'm concerned. They should be euthanized. They should get the death penalty. I'm not even joking. And anybody associated with the Green Party should be kept well away from children, and at very least thrown into a mental asylum. You know, away from society. That should happen to them. Polanski is the new leader of the Green Party. Cheap lefty with slogans, has Marky Smith's old teeth. Yeah. Oh, sounds the type, doesn't he? So he's basically an orc. He's basically an orc. Then that's what he is. Also, they talked about how Prophet and Covenant are an allegory for Muslims way back. Do you know that doesn't make sense? I mean, that doesn't surprise me. That does make sense, actually. Come to think of it, does make sense. Because I mean, if you look at the Covenant, they basically are an entire race of religious zealots who are attempting to push jihad throughout the galaxy. That's essentially what they are. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. And again, they follow a false covenant, right? It turns out that their beliefs are all entirely false and a corruption of, you know, whatever is that universe's equivalent of the gospel. You know, that's essentially. And I mean, I'm not really an expert on Halo lore, but from what I can tell, the covenant do follow a corrupted false gospel, essentially. And they sort of inadvertently bring about the potential extermination of the entire galaxy through the flood, basically, which are pretty terrifying. But again, I'm not an expert on Halo lore. Like, if you ask me about, like, say, Elder Scrolls lore, I'll tell you anything. If you ask me about like Tolkien lore, I'll tell you anything. But Halo lore, although I do like the Halo games, I haven't read a lot of the lore surrounding them, and I'm not as knowledgeable about it as I am about other things. You know, yesterday I read Mere Christianity to my security team. One of my coworkers asked if I could. Oh, really? Why did you bring it to work with you? That's brilliant, man. I like that. That's good. Because yeah, Mere Christianity, I gotta say that should be mandatory reading. You know, because I said this before, I know that, but you know how they do religious studies in school. I don't know why Mere Christianity isn't on the mandatory reading list for religious studies. Because when I was in school, again, we read C.S. Lewis, we read Narnia as part of our religious studies, and we learned about how it was an allegory for the gospel and the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ and all that. But I don't really understand how we read that, you know, as kids, but we weren't made to read something like Mere Christianity. You know, when we reached high school, you know, because I understand reading Narnia when we're in primary school and that being the focus of our, you know, learning about theology and whatnot. But I don't understand how when we went to high school, we didn't really read books. We just watched videos and learned about Muhammad and learned about Sikhism and all that bullshit and all the culture. Like, they didn't really teach us anything about Christian theology, and they didn't really try to make the case for it. But then again, I went to a very progressive leftist school, so it doesn't surprise me that they never let us read Mere Christianity. And they never really, they never really tried to give us any understanding at all in terms of theology. Which more the more I think about it, the more it makes sense because my primary school was a place called St. Peter's, right? I went to a Christian, Church of England affiliated primary school, but when I went to high school, it was a progressive, cultural Marxist, secular establishment, basically. So they were more interested in teaching us about Muhammad, the pedophile, than teaching us about our own religion, our own beliefs. You know, and I can remember one of my RE teachers, a young woman, actually walked out crying because the Pakistani Muslim kids were really rude to her and all that, and were just being dickheads. And yeah, they ended up making the teacher cry. And I seem to remember I like drew a stick figure on a whiteboard and I wrote Muhammad and drew a and I drew a little arrow just to piss off the Muslim kids. That was pretty funny. The Muslims absolutely hated me in school, most of them anyway. I actually did have a couple of mates who were Muslims, but like the dickhead ones didn't like me, you know. He's surging in the polls, talented as the answer to Farage. So that guy's going to go up against Farage, is he? Yeah, good luck with that. Then again, there's enough furry nonces and weirdos in this country to help him out. To be fair, Marquis Smith was a good bloke, apart from being an alcoholic, was right of centre, really. Yeah. What's your favourite Halo? Mine's Halo 2. Oh, I like Halo 3 most personally. Like, I like Halo 3. Sorry, I like Halo 2 slightly more than the first game. Although I think the writing of the first game is a little bit better in some aspects. The second game just introduced a lot more characters, a lot more locations. They had that like badass level with a tank, which I really like. And also they delved a little bit deeper into the Covenant lore as well. So I do like the story of Halo 2 quite a bit. Although some of the level design was really flawed. I think Halo 3 was the best in terms of gameplay and everything else. I think Halo 3 is like badass. I really do. Yeah, yeah, same. I'm trying to read as much as possible. And once I finish that Elder Scrolls book, I'm going to move on to um, Two Towers because I've not read that in years. I think the last time I read Two Towers was 2015, if I remember rightly. That was the last time I read it. I'd like to read it again. So it's been over a decade since I last read it. The thoughts on the whole orcs aren't bad, the woke agenda in Rings of Power. Well, I will never watch Rings of Power. I would literally rather dig out my eyes with a plastic spatula than watch Rings of Power. So that's not going to happen. That'll never happen. To me, Rings of Power is like how do I describe it? I'm trying to think of a great allegory for it. It's again, it's like the red-headed stepchild. It's it's an abomination. You would keep it chained up in the cellar and just starve it to death. I'll never watch it, but it doesn't surprise me at all that they've tried to get people to sympathize with the orcs because again, the orcs are literally made as a evil corruption of the elves, right? That's literally what orcs are. Okay, orcs are literally elves, but they're a corrupted version of them. The elves of the time of Morgoth and Feanor and whatnot were taken by Morgoth and his forces. They were beaten, tortured, mutilated, brainwashed, bastardized, corrupted, and made into the absolute opposite of good. Okay, they are the absolute opposite of good. So orcs are literally Antifa, right? They're literally leftists, right? They're the opposite of everything good. They're everything ugly. They're everything vile. They're everything unhygienic. Everywhere they go, they just burn, loot, and murder, right? That's what they do. So it doesn't surprise me that people who would sit there and watch something like Rings of Power would see the orcs as their counterparts, basically. They would see themselves in the orcs. They would look at a character again, someone like Gothmog or Gorbag or Lurtz or Grishnak or any of the orc like degenerates. Eating each other and trying to kill the hobbits and whatnot, trying to culturally enrich the Shire. They would see that, and they would see themselves and their family and their relatives. You know, That's that's what they would see. Um, where was I? I keep losing my place in the comments. We had to mediate in RE lessons. They got the license out and had us going. Yeah, the incense out. All right. So did you go to a Catholic school? That sounds like a Catholic school to me. Valansky is pretty much a Poundland Jeremy Corbyn, classic student union politician with noise and cheap slogans. I despair. Yeah, yeah. I've never even heard of the guy. I don't think. Well, no. The name again. Same with that with him. The name does ring a bell, but like, I just guess I hadn't paid close enough attention. Do you guys like Toblerone, by the way? I say that as if I'm going to offer you some through the camera. Got some Toblerone. Not had one of these in ages. See that? Little triangles. Gonna dip them in my tea. It's gonna be one of them streams. Mmm. Banging. No, I'm surprised they didn't throw you in prison for that. I suppose when you're a child, leftists didn't fully corrupt society. You can get away with a lot of things when you're a kid. Like I wouldn't get away with that now. If I did that, I'd go to jail. But when I was a kid, that was the kind of thing I used to do. And I remember when they had one of them days. Did you guys ever have that in school where do you know where they would have these people come in and they would talk to you about like domestic violence and they would talk to you about like gender norms and things like that. We had a whole day dedicated to that. And I remember there was like these two guys and these two women, and they were like going around all the classes. They did like a play in the school like main hall for the stage, and they would come to the classes, show us these propaganda videos, and they asked everybody a quiz in the class, and it was something like um, a girl wants to be a plumber, but her boyfriend isn't okay with it. Should he be okay with it? And I said something like, no, because that's a man's job. No, she should be in the kitchen making him a sandwich. I actually put that as my answer. And the teachers got angry. It was something like, should women be allowed to drive? And I said, no, because you don't need a car to get around the kitchen. And like the people that came in to talk to us were like the propagandists who were like taking over the lesson. They got so pissed off at that, and I remember we just took the absolute mick. But it was like even the girls in the class found it funny, like we were just trolling them. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I used to do, like in RE, like draw a little stick figure of Muhammad. Bad people sympathizing with bad people saying it. So yeah, exactly. Look, imagine that it's basically just people snitching on themselves, right? That's what they're doing. They're snitching on themselves. You see evil people like the orcs, right? Again, they're a fictional. They're not a real. They're not real. They're not actual real life human beings. They're not a real race, okay? But you see orcs doing evil things like going around and murdering people and eating each other, and seeing that and empathizing with it, saying, "Hang on a second, those are me, those are my people." That's just leftist snitching on themselves, basically, because any normal person would see the orcs and think, "Wow, those are horrible, those are demons, those are monsters." But if you the left aren't normal people, are they? They're savages. They're evil. Halloween is in 2 days. Yeah, I'm actually working Halloween, sadly. If I wasn't, I'd probably just stay in, watch a movie with the missus, or play a horror game or something. But yeah, I'm actually working, sadly. I'm working in some absolute shithole bar as well, so I'm assuming a lot of trouble. But we'll see what happens. The place will be full of sluts and all, so yeah. It'll be one of them. And it'll be full of junkies and people causing trouble. Mm. Toblerones are good. I like the dark chocolate ones. That nugget honeycomb combo is good. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's Swiss chocolate, isn't it? Swiss bliss. They're actually really nice. More of a Snickers or Twix guy myself. Do you know, I like Snickers, I'm not a big fan of Twix. There's something about Twix, I don't know, I don't they're not like, because they're kind of wafers, aren't they, Twix? But they're not very filling, I don't think. They're kinda like a lesser version of a Kit Kat to me, I'd say. Like, I can eat them, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of them, but Snickers I really like. Those are lovely, like, proper nutty and that. I like them, man. Yeah, I love a Snickers bar. I've not had one in ages though, but I love them. I remember for a laugh asking a girl to marry me at 15 and promising to buy her an iron for Christmas. Brilliant. See, that's the kind of shit I used to say to girls in school. I used to just troll the life out of them and that. I was like a full on, like even at like 14, 15, I was like a full on misogynist. It was brilliant. Nordic, do you remember on one of your live stream you eating food? Some guy said, I came here for boxing predictions, not not hearing you munching on the mic. You said, shut up, you love it. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. What was it? I was eating crisps or something. I think I was eating crisps. And guy was like, yeah, I came here for boxing prediction, not to hear some guy munching. And I was like, shut up, you love it. Yeah. Exactly, because he wouldn't be here if he didn't, you know? Sound like you work in a bar. I'd have jumped in years ago before I grew up, yeah. Yeah, like, I work in a lot of bars, like, but the one I'm working, like, this Friday is an absolute shithole. Like, I hate working there. It's a horrible place. Absolutely horrible. It's the kind of place you, like, bar somebody and then they're back in, like, 10 minutes later, and the idiots behind the bar are serving them when you've told them not to. Again, there's something about, like, do you know when bar staff don't listen? When I'll tell them, "Do not serve that person," they're not allowed in, and then they serve them anyway. That kind of thing. That's it's one of them places. Mix peanut butter with honey and freeze it, then eat it with chocolate homemade Reese's. Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah, homemade Reese's Pieces. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah, how's it going, man? God bless you. God bless you. But yeah, it's gonna be one of them streams. It's gonna be a Toblerone munching stream. Do you remember years ago when the pound shop they used to sell what was it? They used to sell them little tiny bottles. Sorry, tiny Toblerone bars, and it was like four for £1. That was an absolute bargain because they were. It was all right, like four of them for £1. I actually knew about somebody once who, like, see, for his whole family, that this guy was such a cheapskate, right? For his whole family, he went to the pound shop and bought four of them little Toblerones for £1 and gave everybody one as a present for Christmas. He gave his missus and three kids one of them each. Oh, brilliant. What was the one where a girl would ask me to help her with algebra? I'd say, you don't need algebra to do the dishes, yeah. Yeah. Nordic, why didn't you pursue a university degree? Well, I didn't know I don't know what I'd even study at university because I had no idea what I wanted to do, you know? Like, that's the thing. A lot of people go to uni, but they have no idea what job they actually want. So what's the point, you know? I just, I mean, I remember that, like when I left school and all that, oh, you should go to university. You should. I'm like, what's the point in going to university just for the sake of it if you don't actually have something in mind you want to do? I just don't get it, you know? Yeah, yeah. Do you remember that in the pound shop? Everything used to be £1. Now it's still called the pound shop, but everything's more than £1. Like, you don't even get things for £1 there anymore. At least not very often, you know. It should be like the normal price shop. It shouldn't even be called the pound shop because that was the whole point of the pound shop. That was the gimmick. Everything cost £1. Something cost like, again, you could get like four things for £1 and stuff like that. Now you can't even do that. So what's even the point? That lad sounds like he's from Yorkshire. Pound shop for Christmas. Stick a pink ribbon on each toe. But yeah, he did. He actually did that. He wrapped up each Toblerone and gave it for a present. Like he was such a total cheapskate. This guy, it's hilarious. Literally, like a couple days before Christmas, I need to get a present from our family of four. He'll literally just walk into a pound shop and get four Toblerone for a pound, and then wrap them all up individually. I remember I heard about that. I thought that was hilarious. It's brilliant. Used to say about women's football, I'm not interested in women's football for the same reason you're not interested in men's knitting. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Men's knitting. But exactly, like, have you ever actually tried to watch women's football? It's actually comical. Like, it's like watching Mr. Bean or something. It is. Like, when you see women try to kick the ball, and it's like you're just expecting them to fall over or something. They've got like no coordination, nothing. Their tits are bouncing about when they're trying to run, which just makes them off balance. Like women's football's hilarious. It's comical. It is. Again, I compare it to watching something like Mr. Bean. You're watching some sort of disaster about to happen, and then when you see them, when you hear them like screech, like when they shout over to each other, it's like ow, ow. Look, like it's like like, get the ball. But when they try to do it, it just sounds hilarious. Like women's football, honestly, is comedy. Women's boxing doesn't have that same appeal because it's brutal. Like women's boxing, it's just they're hitting each other in the head, and as much as I'm like an evil woman hating misogynist, I don't like seeing them get hit in the head. So I don't enjoy women's boxing at all. But women's football is hilarious. It's funny. Farage is containment. He'll do nothing substantial, and that's why he's tolerated and even promoted by the regime. It's difficult not to be blackpilled about the future of the UK and the West. Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. But again, with Farage, what I've always compared Farage to is he's the kind of guy who basically, when people get disillusioned with the Tory party, Farage will come out of nowhere and start a new party, and he'll say the Tory party has lost their way. You guys need to follow me and my new party, my upstart party, where we're going to bring sanity and conservatism, true conservatism, back to the UK. And then when he builds that party up, and they'll win like a local European election or something like that, he'll then come out and say, now we've got the general election coming up. So we need to back the Tory party now. The Tory party have listened to us. They have heard our votes. They have decided to change or see the error of their ways. And now we need to abandon this upstart party and go back to the Tory party and get behind them for the next general election. Then what happens? The Tory party wins, and you get the exact same leftist politics that you've had for the past 15, 20 years. It's not hard to see what Nigel Farage is all about. He's like one of those what would you call them? Charismatic preachers. When you go to a mega church and you got one of those charismatic preachers who's really, really good at getting people hyped and really good at getting people to donate money to the church, but he's not particularly good at converting people. He's not particularly good at getting people to think critically about their sins or to turn from their sins or anything of that nature. He's not particularly good at getting people to think critically about the concept of conservatism in general. No. Again, he's the classic gatekeeper. He's the gatekeeper for the establishment. Somebody who, you take him down the pub and have a pint. He's not your average politician, that kind of thing. That's always his gimmick. But he's able to get people who, like I say, are disillusioned with the Tory party, more traditional, like boomer conservatives, get them to support the upstart party, and then it's a vicious cycle where he brings them right back to the beginning, and we get the exact same politics we've always had. Again, if you look at the Tory party, they were in power for what, 14 years or even more. And what did they bring to society? And again, this is with people like Nigel Farage gatekeeping for them. We got, well, the Tory party, since the days of David Cameron, accomplished two things. Well, no, they accomplished three things. They legalized gay marriage. They brought about record numbers of mass immigration. And what was the third thing again? Try to think. There was three things I had on my mind, but yeah, legalized gay marriage brought about untold numbers of, just absolute record numbers of mass immigration. And yeah, they funded more wars. So they had Project Ukraine and Project Syria. Just there was more foreign intervention in general than had ever been in any other previous administration under the Tory party, the modern day Tory party. So again, with people like David Cameron in charge, and the coalition that they had with the lefty Liberal Democrats, people like Nick Clegg and whatnot. Let's not forget that's how the Tories got into power back in 2010, right? They got into power through a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, right? Who were just, again, they were basically the predecessors to the Green Party, right? They're basically the exact same thing, right? And I think part of the reason why the Tories took power, or why the establishment and the satanic elite wanted them to take power, was because the Labour Party was, ironically enough, veering a little bit too far to the right. Because this is something a lot of people don't really understand. Because again, it's that false dialectic of the Labour versus Conservative. The whole demographic there. It's the exact same as the false dialectic of Democrat versus Republican over in America. We have the exact same thing here, right? But what a lot of people don't really understand is that the Labour Party, which is supposedly the leftist party, right, are actually a little bit more conservative than the Tory party, which is officially named the Conservative Party, right? They're basically rhinos, or they're the equivalent of rhinos, right? Republican in name only. So if you look at back in 2010, the Labour Party was veering a little bit too much to the right. The Labour Party has also been historically opposed to the state of Israel, right? The state of Israel has never, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I can tell, had any support from the Labour Party in the UK. Okay, all of the donors towards the Labour Party were profoundly anti-Jewish and anti-Israel, right? And their ideas for the interventions in the Middle East were very, very different to what you would see um, from most of the satanic elite at the time, right? So I believe that the Tory party, right, again, under David Cameron, with their coalition with the extreme far left, um, Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrat Party, had to take power. Okay, they had to take power to really, really bring about this utopia that we're seeing. This leftist utopia in the UK. Again, under that administration, the coalition, and then the dissolution of the coalition years later, where it became Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and whatnot. Under that whole quote unquote conservative administration, the only things that were really accomplished, like I said, were um, again the legalization of gay marriage, the record numbers of mass immigration, and foreign intervention, Project Ukraine, Project Syria, you name it, right? So literally under the so-called Conservative Party in the UK, you have had nothing but leftism. You have had nothing but far left politics from that party. And now that the Labour Party has taken over, and it's interesting because again, the Labour Party. I'm not trying to say. I'm not trying to say that the Labour Party is right wing or anything like that. What I'm saying is they're not quite as far left as the Tory Party is. Not quite. A lot of people don't seem to realise that. Um, but the Labour Party's main agenda right now seems to be Islam. Islam actually seems to be their main agenda, to bring about Sharia law in the UK. And that's part of what the whole digital ID thing is all about. All right, they want to bring in mass, mass migration from places like Somalia, places like India, and places like Pakistan and whatnot. They just want as many, um, and it's not even just about these people being Asian or Arabic or what. It's not even about the race. They want as many Arabized people as possible. People from Arabic cultures. People who come from a society that's tainted by Islam. Because the Labour Party has always been, Islam has always been one of their strongest weapons against the West and against the state of Israel. Basically, I know that was a lot to go through there, but I probably didn't articulate it very well. But yeah, the Labour Party has slightly different geopolitical goals to what the Conservative Party had for 15 plus years, you know. I've tried to watch women's football. It's horrendous. Yeah, it's hilarious. Again, it's like watching Mr. Bean. It's like a disaster movie. It's funny, just comedy, you know. The goalkeepers in women's football are like that kid in the playground neither team wanted. Yeah, because I mean, again, you look at the way women are built. They've got big, wide hips. You know, big, wide uteruses made for bearing children. They've also got tits, right? And even if your tits aren't very big, the fact that you've got tits means that it's gonna interfere with your movement in some way. So when you try to walk down the stairs at a fast pace, or you try to run or something like that, your tits are gonna bounce around all over the place. So you're gonna need to use a training bra, and that doesn't always work depending on your genetics and whatnot. So again, women are just not built for sport, right? Unless it's something like swimming. You know, something where a slightly elevated natural body fat percentage can help you and help you stay afloat and whatnot. Women are ironically not bad at swimming, but when it comes to and again something like gymnastics, where if you get like one of the like genetically inferior chicks who have got like no tits whatsoever and no hips and just have no chance of having a normal life, they tend to get sent into gymnastics, right? Because they can use that lack of like womanly attributes to their advantage, right? Because obviously they don't have the testosterone or the musculature of men, but they don't have the natural body fat percentage and features of a healthy normal woman. So they end up getting put into a sport like gymnastics or something like that. But again, the vast majority of sports women are just not built for. They're just not built for them whatsoever. So it's I don't see even the point. They'll always be inferior. Women boxing is cruel and unusual stuff. I don't like women hurting each other. Again, because you're a good, decent human being. No good, normal, moral, decent human being wants to watch women beat each other up. None of them do. Again, the kind of people who would enjoy women's boxing are probably either cooks or people who hate women. People who just want to see women beat each other up and give each other brain damage. Yeah, Farage gives me dodgy evangelist vibes. It reminds me of the film Leap of Faith. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see what you mean. Actually, just purchase a dairy milk hazelnut. Oh yeah, they're nice. Them. I had one of them a couple of months ago. I think, if I remember rightly. The transformation of the Conservatives under Cameron was stunning when the Guardian started saying, "You're okay," massive red flag. Surely. But again, David Cameron, again, if you look at that situation clearly, I was very young at the time, so I was too young to understand. But even back then, I knew there was something off about it. David Cameron was he took over the Conservative Party, right? And he agreed to a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, right? So they didn't just win that election because they couldn't defeat the Labour Party. Like when David Cameron was going up against Gordon Brown, who was at that point in time, I think Gordon Brown was one of the least popular Labour prime ministers of all time. He had little to no support. Nobody liked him. Everybody hated him. Probably that was probably just because he was a Scot, right? That's probably why everybody hated him. But let's be real. But on a serious note, nobody liked Gordon Brown. His approval rating was at an all time low. But even David Cameron under the Conservative Party couldn't beat Gordon Brown in an election. He couldn't beat him just on his own merit because the Tory Party, nobody trusted them. Again, they were the evil far right Nazi party, right? Even though they weren't. But I digress. They couldn't really beat Gordon Brown. So it's a bit strange how that the fight that Gordon Brown and the Labour Party, again anti-Israel, pro-Islam, things of that nature at the time, the fight that they put up against the Tory party was supposedly so big that the Tories had to align themselves with the far left Liberal Democrats. So how does that work? So you've got supposedly this is why I call it this false dialectic, right? So you have the false dialectic of the right wing Tories, quote unquote conservatives, and the left wing Labour, quote unquote liberals, right? Yet the Tory party is actually more liberal and more leftist in their policies and their approach to certain things than the Labour Party is, right? And then you have the Tories forming a coalition. Let's not forget this. They form a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. Again, they're the precursors or the predecessors to what we have now with the Green Party, right? The the Liberal Democrats are literally far left psychopaths, right? Just insane, right? So David Cameron and the Tory Party form a coalition with the Liberal Democrats to basically join together to defeat the Labour Party, right? They take power through the skin of their teeth. It wasn't like a landslide victory. It was a very, very close victory, despite Gordon Brown being one of the least popular prime ministers ever, right? I mean, the UK probably needed to be, what we're seeing right now with Starmer, for example, the UK, even back then, probably needed to be a security state, a police state, just so that the people wouldn't lynch Gordon Brown like they probably would now with Starmer, right? If you think Starmer probably is even less popular than Gordon Brown was. But back then, Gordon Brown was probably the least popular prime minister ever, right? So you have the supposed right wing Tory party forming a coalition with the far left Liberal Democrats to defeat the supposed leftist Labour Party. And then all you had under that coalition, again, under that coalition, you had gay marriage becoming legalized. Now that doesn't surprise me. Again, you have the supposed right wing Tory party aligning themselves in a coalition with Liberal Democrat, and then gay marriage shortly after that becomes legalized just a couple years or so later, right? You have again record number like when the Tories actually take full power, so when the Liberal Democrats get phased out and become a thing of the past, really, and the Tories take full power, what you then end up with, ironically, is you have record numbers of mass immigration. All of a sudden, border security in this country just isn't a thing. All of a sudden, there's boats coming across the Atlantic, thousands and thousands of people every single day coming in. Literally every single day. Literally, there's thousands of them, right? And that's under the supposed Tory rule. This is after the coalition has been disbanded, right? Again, the coalition isn't even a thing. It's just the Tories and what people voted for. The reason people voted the likes of Boris Johnson in was to deal with mass immigration, to put a stop to it. Okay. Yet under his rule, under his leadership, there was more immigration than the entire history of the UK, right? So now just recently, the Labour Party, after like 14, 15 years or whatever, has taken back control. And we're in the exact same situation we were in before, where you have the least popular prime minister that there has ever been. Okay, nobody likes Keir Starmer. Nobody. Again, if this country wasn't a police state, the people of this country would probably lynch Keir Starmer. They probably would, just like they would have done to Gordon Brown. But we're getting nothing but essentially all we're getting the same policies, but we're getting rhetoric on how we're going to stop the boats, we're going to halt immigration, this, that, and the other. We need to stop the evil far right. It's just the exact same nonsense, except it's from an anti-Israel, pro-Gaza perspective, if that makes sense. Can you see why I see why I say it's a false dialectic? Why we're all under total manipulation? No refuge for the persecuted Christians in Africa and India. Yeah, I mean, there was 19,000, if I'm not mistaken, 19,000 Christian churches across all of Africa have been burned down by Islamists, right? Literally, look the untold numbers of Nigerian Christians that have been executed in public and their churches have been burnt down to the ground. Have you heard anybody in the news mention this? Has anybody in the Labour Party mentioned this? Has anybody in the Green Party mentioned it? I don't think so. Okay, it's nowhere to be heard. Even on social media, you have to really go looking for it to find anything about it. Like what's happening in Nigeria right now. Again, I think not even just Nigeria, all across Africa and places like India, right? In Africa alone, I believe 19,000 churches were either blown up or burnt to the ground, and it's all by the Islamic Caliphate. That's happening all over the world. Now, the Labour Party won't mention it again because the Labour Party's number one voter base and number one backer is essentially Islam, right? The Labour Party has always been pro-Islam. If you go and listen to someone like George Galloway or whatever, they're always bitching and moaning about Israel, this, that, and the other. Like that's literally all. Like the Labour Party prioritizes Islam over the LGBT. They prioritize Islam over environmentalism. They prioritize Islam over everything. Like make no mistake, Islam is again it's one of the Labour Party's main agenda. It always has been. All right, they've always been the party that backs Islam, and the more the more Arabized people that come into the country, if that's even a word, um, the more support they have. You know, there was a girl in our year who could run the 100 meter and play herself on side. Never seen the boys paying such keen attention at sports day. Yeah. They were roaring her on, massive athletic fans or something, yeah, and they was there 2 things that she had that kept them watching though? Like, was there 2 very bouncy things that they couldn't keep their eyes off? I'm not talking about the ball. I don't give a shit. Labour had been in for 13 years and people were tired of them. Plus, Brown was a sidekick to Blair, not a leader, and Cameron still fell miles short of winning outright. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. It goes to show you that's how manufactured that whole situation was. Gordon Brown, as I said before, at that point in time, again, because this was he was like you say, he was a Blairite, right? He was basically a descendant of the Blair administration, right? Gordon Brown was the least popular prime minister the UK had ever had. Like nobody liked Gordon Brown. Nobody. He had no support. Even supporters of the Labour Party didn't like him. Right? Nobody from either faction liked him. Like his approval rating was so low. He was considered a joke. He was considered a meme. Nobody liked Gordon Brown. I remember being a kid. Everyone just took the piss out of Gordon Brown. Even people who liked Tony Blair thought nothing good of Gordon Brown. Nobody liked him. And it still took a coalition, like a contrived coalition from the far left Liberal Democrats and the Tory party to get Gordon Brown out and to put the Tories in power. Basically, like it's crazy to me. Like it's actually fascinating when you think about it. You know, a lot of Liberal Democrat voters never voted for them again after the coalition. The Lib Dems got wiped out in 2015, and Cameron actually won that time. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, well, the coalition was formed, and a lot of far left Liberal Democrats abandoned the party because they saw the party as subservient to the much larger and much more influential Tory party, which was, really just as leftist as the Liberal Democrats were, but that wasn't the narrative pushed by the media, right? So, again, in 2015, the Liberal Democrat Party just completely disbanded pretty much. Like, it's still around in name, but it's a shadow of what it used to be. It's not a large party anymore. And it essentially, like I said earlier, they were the predecessors for the Green Party. The Green Party right now, if you look at the Green Party, you see all these nonces and these weirdo, like unhygienic furries and all that run the Green Party. The kind of people you just wouldn't allow them anywhere near your kids. They are the descendants of the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats, that party, most of their supporters, again, completely abandoned them after the coalition. But even when Cameron took power, like when when the coalition fell apart and Cameron actually took proper power in 2015 and after, of course, the whole thing with Brexit, when Boris Johnson went on to take power and whatnot, you still got far left politics, and you got more far left politics than ever before. Again, there was more immigrants coming into this country illegally under the Tory rule than there even was under the coalition with the Liberal Democrats. There was more immigration into this country than all eras of Labour Party rule all throughout history. And that all happened under the Conservative Party, under the Tory Party. So the Tory Party, you could honestly make the argument that the Tory Party are the most leftist or most far left political establishment that has ever existed. all throughout history, not just in our country, in any country. Like, you would be hard pressed to find a political party that has facilitated as much illegal immigration as the Tory party in the UK. I mean, you could argue maybe the Biden administration in America, but I feel like that's an unfair comparison because America is such a big country. And again, America isn't an island. So it's a lot easier. Well, it is an island, but it's a much bigger one that borders other countries. So in America, you have the border to Canada and you have the border to Mexico, right? So it's very, very well, it's a lot more difficult to police immigration in America, right? So if you have an organization like the Biden administration who are just evil leftist scum, right? Who just all they have to do, they don't even have to facilitate immigration. All they have to do is turn a blind eye, just underfund and undersupport the border patrol and ICE and all these other agencies. Don't let them do their job, hinder them, and you'll get record numbers of mass immigration. But in the UK, it's actually quite hard to emigrate into the UK. It's difficult to do it. Like, it's dangerous, very dangerous to cross the channel on a dinghy or involve yourself with people smuggling. It's a very, very dangerous business, and it costs a lot of money too. So these people that are coming in, in a lot of cases, they've paid a lot of money to get in, and they're economic migrants because a they're expecting a return on their investment, essentially, because they're going to come over here and claim benefits and commit all sorts of crime and whatnot. So you have to imagine the mental gymnastics that had to have been done, and the kind of facilitation is the word I would use, that had to have been implemented by the Tory party to allow the kind of record numbers of mass immigration that happened under their rule over the course of 15 years or so. It's a lot worse than anything we've ever seen. Like, it's worse than the Biden administration. It's worse than what's going on in Canada. It's worse than any other country. It's worse than Germany. It's literally that there is nothing I can compare it to. The Tory party in the UK are honestly the most far left party I've ever come across in the world ever. Like nothing even comes close to comparing with it. Nothing. Um, are the Christians in Nigeria fighting back? I feel bad for them. They have it worse than us. Well, I think a lot of them are, but they don't have much of a chance because the Islamists in that part of the world are far more organized, far more well armed, and are probably being funded by some very powerful billionaires, I would imagine. So, yeah, but like I said, like something like Africa alone, from what I hear, there's been like 19,000, maybe even more Christian churches have been blown up or burnt to the ground. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they don't have much chance fighting back. When the Islamic voting bloc gets organised, the Labour Party will realise their loyalty was misplaced. It will not be reciprocated once there's a UK Muslim party. God help us. No, but that's what they want, though. They want as many. Again, look, the Labour Party don't care about the productive members of society. They want there to be a certain number of people in this country, right? No more, no less. They don't care if the vast majority of those people are like Somalian Muslims who walk around stabbing people and raping little girls. They don't care as long as they meet those numbers. They would be perfectly fine with a pro-Muslim majority. And the same thing is happening at a smaller scale in America, because if you look in America, there is a what do you call it? If you look in America, there's a Muslim mayor, or a Muslim is running for mayor in New York City, and that guy is being backed by very, very powerful people, right? And I very much suspect he's going to take power. He's going to become the mayor of New York, and he's going to become their version of Sadiq Khan. He is. He's going to become their Sadiq Khan, and basically expect to see more 9/11 type attacks. You're not talking about boxing this stream. Nope. Even though you stream a lot, I don't think I've ever seen you get a super chat. It happens from time to time, not very often. Doesn't really matter though. I don't do this for money. If I did this for money, you think I would say the things I say if I was in it to make money? That would be very, very unwise. If I was in this to make money, it would be foolish for me to say the things I say. Do you know, I did watch that. I watched it today. Believe it or not, I did. I watched the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes interview. It was an interesting interview, but I felt like they were holding a few things back, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that Nick Fuentes in particular was telling the full story. What I did find interesting though is Nick Fuentes went in a little bit about his overall origin story. He talked a little bit about how when he was an 18-year-old activist and he was still studying in college and things like that, how the Daily Wire supposedly tried to cancel him. Now, bear in mind, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. You don't know how credible Nick Fuentes is or how honest he is. He might have just been making it up. He didn't provide any sources, as far as I'm aware. But according to him, Ben Shapiro and some of the higher ups at the Daily Wire got him fired from his job and got him fired from a talk show he had a section on and whatnot. And that was supposedly, according to him, it's just because he was asking questions about Israel. That's possibly the case. But look, my thing with Nick Fuentes, and I've got no issue with Nick Fuentes, but I'm not as familiar with him as I am with a lot of other right-wing activists. But my thing with Nick Fuentes is I see him as a little bit typecast, if that makes sense. Like, his whole thing, and look, he's a young guy and obviously a really smart guy, but like, his whole thing, his whole gimmick seems to be that he's the guy on the right who criticizes Israel. That seems to be his gimmick. I'm not saying that you shouldn't criticize Israel. I'm not saying that's wrong. I criticize Israel all the time. I think everybody on the right should criticize Israel. But I feel like it's gotten to the point where anything that Nick Fuentes has to say is kind of diluted by the fact that that's who he is. He's a caricature of that. Okay, his supporters even call themselves groypers, which I guess is supposed to be funny, but instead it just makes them sound like a bunch of idiots. Like, why are you calling yourself a groyper? You know what? Why? Again, I don't like using the term cult because I think that's kind of stupid. It's another buzzword, but that's cultish behavior. And again, he's making himself into a kind of a caricature of the right, which I don't like. Again, he's a young guy, and it's possible that he's not doing this intentionally. But I feel as if, like, again, if you look at how it seems a little bit. I know I'll get accused of making up a conspiracy here, but it seems a little bit convenient to me how, in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder, the likes of Candace Owens, who I believe is a complete shill at this point, and Nick Fuentes are basically being used, maybe against their will, to stir up a lot of division in the right. Because again, with a lot of the things that Charlie Kirk was saying in the days leading up to his death, how critical he was of Israel and of Benjamin Netanyahu, and with the ADL, who were constantly trying to deplatform him. With all that going on, it's only natural that people would start pointing the finger at Israel and saying they had something to do with Charlie's death. Now, I've got no issue with people making that correlation and people insinuating that. But the problem I have with the likes of Nick Fuentes is, hey, go away, stupid, uninstall Avast, go away. Avast came up on my screen. But yeah, the only thing the problem I have with the likes of Nick Fuentes is that seems to be all he's known for. Anything Nick Fuentes says, any genuine issues he brings up, any activism he tries to do, is diluted by him being the guy on the right who criticizes Israel. That's just who he's known as, and with his supporters actually calling themselves groypers, like literally unironically just humiliating themselves. That I feel like that's not very productive. I feel like people on the right, people like Nick Fuentes and on the other side, the likes of Matt Walsh, the pro-Israel, the anti-Israel, the moderates and whatnot. I feel like these people should come together, sit down, stop insulting each other, stop calling each other Israel shills, or stop calling each other anti-Semites, and actually come together for a greater purpose, if that makes sense. Have a bit of unity. I feel like all these stupid different factions on the right, again, people calling themselves groypers and shit. Like, to me, it's just, this is I think it's a massive conspiracy. I do, to completely discredit and split apart the right. I genuinely do, and I feel as if Nick Fuentes is being used for that. That's just the vibe I get with him, you know. Again, look, the dude's only 27. He's a young guy. He's a smart guy, but I do think he's being used. I do. Like, and again, it's the kind of thing where when you think of Nick Fuentes, what's the first thing you think of? Do you think of conservatism? Do you think of Christianity? Do you think of right wing politics? Do you think of, some sort of moderation? Do you think of intelligent discussion? Do you think of, um, having conversations, trying to get to the truth, or do you just think of pointing the finger at Israel? Do you just think of, it's Israel, everything is Israel? Like that. That's what you think of when you think of Nick Fuentes and his supporters. So how productive is that really? That's my problem with Nick Fuentes. Now, I don't have that same problem with Tucker Carlson because I think Tucker Carlson was dragged into the Israel situation. Like there is nothing whatsoever that divides people on the right more than the subject of Israel. Again, the subject of Israel, it drives a massive wedge in the conservative movement. And again, I was talking about this earlier with the Labour Party and the Tory Party, right? Both of which are leftists. But that's something that drives a wedge between them. So you could argue that it even drives a wedge between the left. But again, I don't really care about the left. The left can die for all I care. They can be lined up and shot. Like I literally right now, as far as this conversation is concerned, I don't care about the left, and their problems. It's not my problem. But I feel like the right needs to stop with the sectarianism involving the subject of Israel. I really think that needs to stop. I really do. Like the sectarianism surrounding Israel is completely killing the right. It is. Like I'm seeing people in the Christian community, like there's Christian YouTubers, right, who dedicate a lot of their time to combating radical Islam, right? A lot of these guys are literally spending like 3 hours doing a live stream, literally just grazing Israel, like glazing Israel, kissing Israel's ass, and talking about how anybody that questions them, like Nick or like Candace or like Tucker, is an Israel shill, right? And I don't think that's very productive. I would rather these guys sit down together and talk, like Charlie Kirk suggested. Again, because you remember Charlie Kirk sat down with Megyn Kelly and talked about how she was getting accused of anti-Semitism. He sat down with Tucker Carlson and did the same thing. And when the Jewish lobbying groups that were involved with Charlie spent so much time that they spent so much time trying to bully Charlie into canceling these people for not being 100% pro-Israel and for not supporting the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the whole of Palestine. Charlie refused to let them bully him, right? And he would sit down and talk to anybody. Like Charlie never, to my knowledge, refused to sit down and talk to somebody and and debate with them and whatnot. But the likes of Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens and whatnot, I feel that they're literally being used to drive a big wedge between the right. Again, I hate this sectarianism. I hate it. The sectarianism surrounding the subject of Israel is horrible for the right. It really is horrible. Greens have more than 100,000 members now. Many will be ex-Liberal Dems, and yeah, I've seen the odd super chat. I've sent the odd super chat. Yeah, you have as well. Yeah, you've contributed. I appreciate that, man. But yeah, you guys know I don't do this for money. Why would I? I mean, any money I make on YouTube, it's like I make that in one night. Like the money I would make, let's say in like a couple of months on YouTube, I make it in one shift in my job. So it's so unconsequential. Yeah, I'm monetized. Well, I'm not always monetized. A lot of my videos do get demonetized, but I don't even care. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. It means nothing to me, Yeah, but if there's a UK Muslim party to support, they will drop Labour like a stone. I think that was the idea behind Corbyn's lot, to become an unofficial Muslim party. Yeah, and yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, Sadiq Khan, if he gets driven out of London as the mayor, I could see him starting a Muslim party. That guy should be deported. The Islamists are stupid. They don't realize they will have to fight other cultures in our country as well. No, they don't care. Look, listen, Muslims do not care. Muslims would literally blow themselves up if it meant Alhamdulillah. Like they're just brainwashed, cultish idiots. Okay, that's what Muslims are. They're idiots, all of them, and they do not care. They don't value life. There is no value in the sanctity of life with Islam. There never has been. There never will be. Again, they will happily blow up their whole family if it means pandering to the paedophile Prophet Muhammad. Clocking into work very soon. Yeah, that's fine, man. God bless you. Um, Nick Fuentes said it was base to prefer younger with destiny, therefore not to be trusted. When he was meeting the police, he said he was Mexican. Yeah. I've heard a lot about that. It's, again, again, he gives me bad vibes, as I said earlier. Nick didn't make up the origin story. I've been watching Nick for 5 years, so I've seen the stuff before. Yeah. I didn't say he made it up. I'm saying he could have made it up for all I know. But again, I just feel like Nick Fuentes and the whole cult he has surrounding him is not particularly it's not particularly pragmatic. You know, I feel as if he's being used. And again, he's just a young guy, so I don't even blame him for this. I believe he's being used by the satanic elite to keep people fixated on the sectarianism in the conservative movement surrounding the subject of Israel. That's genuinely what I believe. I genuinely believe that. And again, I just don't think it's very productive. Again, following Nick Fuentes and constantly going on about Israel all the time and calling yourself a groiper and everything like again unironically calling yourself a groiper and you know seeing Nick Fuentes again, this 27-year-old guy who, let's be honest, it's not as if there aren't red flags surrounding him. It's not as if this is the kind of guy you want to hang your hat on and things like that. I feel like that's not particularly um it's not particularly practical, if you ask me. Yeah. Charlie Kirk can't get a break. He lives rent free in the left. Yeah, he does, and that's because his memory is haunting the left. It is because people keep talking about Charlie. They keep going on about him. The left keeps promoting lies about him, and it will never stop because, again, Charlie's death has been a massive. And I know I've said this time and time again. I'm sick of saying it, but Charlie's death has been a massive catalyst for a Christian revival that's happening all over the world, and it's terrifying people. It is. It's literally like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You strike me down, I'll become far more powerful than you could possibly imagine. like Charlie is literally a Christian martyr. Okay, he's having the same effect as the likes of Kennedy and Martin Luther King did. You know, and I'm not comparing him to them. He's a lot better than them, put it that way. But you know, he's also reminiscent of a lot of the apostles and the Christian martyrs who died in Scripture, and that's why he's terrifying these people. You know, when people on TikTok will post a video and say, "I am Charlie Kirk," you know, some young kid in college or whatever, that's terrifying the left. The satanic elite wanted rid of Charlie. Okay, they wanted him dead. They wanted him not only dead, they wanted him to disappear. They wanted him discredited. The very reason that people called Charlie a Nazi and a fascist and all that was because of the ADL. It was the Jewish ADL, who are again a satanic organization. They were the ones who smeared Charlie for years, who classified him as a threat to democracy and things of that nature, and put a big target on his back. Okay, because again, look, the left will call anybody to the right of Karl Marx a fascist, right, and a Nazi, but with Charlie, he had a particularly big target on his back because of the ADL, you know. Which again, that's why I sympathise with anybody who points the finger at Israel after Charlie's death. But I just don't think that's particularly. I don't think that's particularly pragmatic or practical. I feel like it's black and white way of thinking. You know, I don't trust 99% of the things being pushed by the algorithm. Do you think Kirk was one of the rare genuine ones? Yes, I do. Again, look, I would encourage people, see if you're going to do some research on Charlie Kirk. Don't just watch the videos post his death. Go and watch some of his debates in full. This guy had like hour-long debates, and he would go to churches. He would give sermons. He would give speeches. He would he would, go look at some of the videos of him just talking with his wife and with his family and with his friends and things of that nature, and just listen to the guy very carefully. Listen to his justifications for why he has the worldview that he has, and a lot of the stuff people are saying, like the reactionary right, when they say, "Oh well, Charlie's dad knew Donald Trump's mate," or Donald Trump's goldfish was JD Vance's uncle and all that, and these people are all related and blah blah blah, like all this irrelevant crap that people come out with. Again, it's irrelevant crap. That's exactly what it is. Listen to what the guy said, listen to his policies, listen to his opinions, listen to his debates, and judge for yourself who the guy was and what his true agenda was. I don't really care who his dad was related to or who his mate's uncle's goldfish went to college with or whatever. Like again, all because Charlie Kirk was popular because people listened to him doesn't mean that he wasn't to be trusted. Again, that's black and white way of thinking. That's what that is. That's seeing somebody. That's kind of an element of narcissism there, right? That's seeing somebody who is successful, who is influential, who has a lot of friends, a lot of followers, and who was able to get who was able to make an impact on the world, right? And we're told in scripture, as I talked about at length in my last live stream, we're told to bring as many people into the kingdom of God as possible, right? As we possibly can. We're told to preach the gospel. When you see a guy who has a lot of influence and a growing following, and he's able to go to a college campus, and again, all of a sudden there's thousands of people there waiting for him, right? All he has to do is announce he's going to be there, and people are going to be there to either protest him or talk about him or talk to him and support him and whatnot. Just because he was able to reach that level of notoriety doesn't mean that he wasn't legit. But again, I think people on the right have been kind of, we're like battered housewives in a sense. We've been beaten and coerced into thinking this about a lot of people. It's like we've been burned so many times by these supposed influencers and politicians that when somebody comes along and says the stuff that that we all believe, says that everything he says is 100% legitimate, 100% factual. He says all the right things. He does all the right things. He's a great role model, married man with kids, this, that, and the other. Literally, you can't argue with any of his points, really. People start looking for reasons to criticize. People start looking for things like, oh, well, again, his dad's uncle's goldfish went to university with Donald Trump's nephew's tax tax attorney or something. Like all these stupid connections people start making. Oh, he knew this guy who knew that guy, so who was married to this guy or that guy. So this must mean he's a shill. Like again, it's irrelevant crap. Judge people by their fruits, okay? Charlie's not guilty of association just because he knows certain people. Again, he was close friends with Dave Rubin, right, a homosexual. That doesn't mean that he's in favor of homosexuals, okay? It doesn't mean that he supports gay marriage and things like that. Now, I know he used to, but he went back on it and made it very, very clear that he went back on it too. But I feel like a lot of the criticism on the reactionary right for Charlie, like him being pushed by the algorithm and whatnot, is just it's literally just cognitive dissonance, if you ask me. Yeah. Groiper is such a stupid term. It is. It's a stupid term, and it just makes you sound like an idiot. Like it honestly does. Like people, the fact that people on the right are literally unironically calling themselves groipers, identifying as being part of some cult with this young guy Nick Fuentes as the head of that cult. He's the guy you're deciding to hang your hat on. I find that very, very disturbing. I genuinely do, and I find it very, very concerning. And I feel as if it's the satanic elite literally driving a wedge between the conservative movement, having everybody point their finger at one external tormentor rather than our own internal tormentors, right? The own enemies that we have in our countries and in our movements and whatnot. Just get them focused on one black and white subject. Yeah, he apparently streamed gay porn. I've heard about that multiple times. I've not looked into it, but yeah. Nick's done many debates over the years, but when he has to debate guys like Matt Walsh, they would refuse, and even Charlie refused. Well, I've heard that, but I've not seen any evidence of it. Again, I heard people all the time say, oh, Charlie's scared to debate Nick Fuentes, but I've never once heard Charlie himself say it. Right, and I mean Nick Fuentes did turn up to one of Charlie's events and rightfully called Charlie out on endorsing a gay black guy who was he was kind of bringing the guy into the conservative movement and was refusing to call the guy out on his lifestyle. That was several years ago, and look, I agreed with Nick Fuentes on that. So again, don't accuse me of engaging in black and white thinking. I'm not, okay. I think Charlie, in most cases, judging him by his fruits, he was a lot more productive and a lot more influential than Nick Fuentes. But on that particular issue, I agreed with Nick Fuentes, and I think Charlie himself later agreed. He went back on that standard. Like, he was still friends with the guy, but he stopped affirming the guy's lifestyle. Again, let's not forget Charlie is a he was very young once, right? And again, him and Nick Fuentes would have agreed on a lot of things. They were very similar in a lot of ways, but I just feel like the way Nick Fuentes goes about things and this weird cult that he seems to have formed is not helping. It's not helping the conservative movement at all. Let me just plug my charger in 1 sec. And that's my charger plugged in. And get back to these comments. I have to go to work. Yeah, no worries, man. Peace. Nick also said only Catholics can go to heaven. And yeah, he's verifiably wrong about that. Verifiably wrong. So that's another stupid thing he said. Yeah. Kirk implied the Groypers are useless people. Well, yeah, they are. They are useless because literally all they do, I mean, literally all they do is point the finger at Israel and call everybody an Israel shill. That's not particularly productive, especially when a guy like Charlie would sit down with anybody. He would talk to anybody. He would have an open, honest discussion. He would debate with them. He wasn't scared of talking about censored subjects and things of that nature. Like, to my knowledge, Charlie had balls of steel in that sense. He was one of the only mainstream conservative political activists who would talk about Israel openly and wasn't scared to criticize them, but at the same time, he wasn't scared to declare his support for them. All right, it's a black and white issue, as I've talked about many times. Israel is one of them things that you have to be. As far as I'm concerned, if you're being honest, and I mean like intellectually honest, you have to take a moderate view on Israel because you can't just say, "Oh well, Israel needs to be like nuked off the face of the planet because they're such bad people and what they're doing to the Palestinians and whatnot," and then claim to have some sort of moral high ground when there's plenty of civilians there and whatnot, and then completely ignore the fact that Israel is literally in a fight for its own existence. Like, it comes down to this: do you believe that Israel has the right to exist as a state? And if the answer is yes, then you cannot support Hamas. You cannot support Gaza because if Israel were to just lay down its arms, if the IDF were to stand down entirely and stop defending the borders and whatnot, the Gazans would literally exterminate Israel. Right? They would march in there, they would rape and murder every single individual there, nuke it off the face of the map. Like the Iran, for example, would nuke Israel off the face of the map if it wasn't for foreign intervention. So I feel as if it comes down to that, but that doesn't mean that you can't criticize the regime in Israel and a lot of the things that they're doing. It doesn't mean you can't, like, again, you have to be somewhat moderate if you're being intellectually honest on the subject. You can't have a black and white way of looking at the situation surrounding Israel. You can't. To be honest, Nick is not as bad as Candace. He didn't even point to Israel for choice. Yeah, he didn't, but a lot of his followers did. A lot of his like that's the thing. See, Nick Fuentes himself actually got accused of partially being behind Charlie's murder, which was absurd. I said so at the time. That was ridiculous. Nick Fuentes does not have anywhere near the kind of clout to organize Charlie's murder, and it wasn't one of his idiot followers either. It wasn't one of these, like, stupid groypers. It was literally some tranny who was probably part of some cabal involved with the satanic elite. Now, I've got no problem with people pointing at Israel and suggesting that the ADL might have had something to do with it because they had motive to get rid of Charlie, right? But my point is, it's not particularly pragmatic or practical to do that without any sort of hard evidence, right? Candace Owens, I agree there. She went completely off the rails. She thinks she knows everything. She has it all. She has all the answers. Like she won't tell you the answers. She has all the proof, but she won't show you the proof. I literally think that to be perfectly honest, I honestly believe Candace Owens is a pawn of the satanic elite. I think she's a shill because she has done nothing in the past couple of years but ridicule the conservative movement and drive a massive wedge between them. Again, I'll forgive someone like Nick Fuentes because he's just a young guy who doesn't seem to know what he's doing, doesn't seem to have a clue. But sorry, somebody's shouting outside. But yeah, some junkie, I think. But yeah, what was I saying? Candace Owens, if you even if you look at her origin story, where she came from, right? Supposedly she ran a website, right, which was a leftist website for leftists, which was dedicated to doxing people on dating sites, right? People that you don't know, people that might make you uncomfortable, and preventing them from ever getting preventing them forever getting dates again or something stupid like that. That was what she used to do. She used to make money off that. Apparently, she literally went from that to all of a sudden doing this massive 180 and becoming a conservative activist who was all about the family and being pro-life and things of that nature. And it was interesting because Candace Owens, this is why I find individuals like her particularly dangerous, right? Because you can't be a deceiver without providing a certain amount of truth, right? Candace Owens did a lot of good for the conservative movement initially and really built a reputation for herself. For example, she did more to stop the anti-white racism than most white people, right? She did a lot for white people. She genuinely did. She did a lot for the family. She tried to promote women getting married young and having kids and things of that nature. So being a stay-at-home mum, supporting your family, things of that nature. She debated people on that. She went out there and tried to convert as many young people as possible. She was a very good role model, at least ostensibly, right? She was a very good role model for young black women, right? And young white women too, as well. So she was good to have in the movement. The problem is, it seems to me like Candace Owens was deceiving people from the very beginning. If you look at her origin story and you look at how she just did that massive 180 and she became, again, she's now known for being a crazy conspiracy theorist, talking about bee cults and things of that nature. Like she'll talk about communism, but she'll make it seem like it's literally some sort of ridiculous, like I don't know how even describe it, but if you go look at some of the things she said recently about the communist cults that considers themselves like bees, like a hive mind, and how they were behind Charlie's death, how Charlie came to her in a dream and told her who it was that killed her, that she has the evidence on a file that shows who killed Charlie, but she's not allowed to show it. And all the dumb shit she's been saying, the constant like fear mongering about Israel. I honestly think she's a very, very well funded and well trained double agent, basically. Like I don't trust Candace Owens at all. Like I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her, basically. So yeah, I think she's very dangerous. I genuinely do. And yeah, again, there's no proof behind Israel doing it. So it's not productive to just say it's Israel and point the finger at Israel. There's no proof there whatsoever. Just gonna wander home from work. Catch you soon. Thanks for the content. Yeah, no worries, man. God bless you. I've been enjoying Gypsy Crusader content recently. I don't think I've ever seen that channel. Is it a good channel? Is it based? I might check it out. Where was I? Well, we can only hope. I mean, the only way to stop Islam at this point is another crusade. Is that ever going to happen? Is it even possible for that to happen? I don't know, man. It would have to in order to stop Islam. Yeah, yeah. Howard Foster would force a TKO over Usyk. Possibly he should be the WBO interim champion now. Yeah, he would stop it if he missed it. Oh yeah, we saw your name. Yeah, of course we did. It's right there. Yeah, how's it going, Bruce? It's possible Israel did it, or maybe the guy was just deranged lunatic, or could it not be both? I mean, could the guy have been a Mancunian candidate? Working for some on behalf of some cult or cabal. I mean, it could have been, for all we know. Messianic Jews saved, even though they follow the Old Testament. Well, no, because if they're Messianic, then they do follow the New Testament and the Old Testament. All right, and Jesus is prophesied in the Old Testament, but he's not mentioned by name, at least not to my knowledge. And if the Jews are messianic, then that believes, even though they follow the traditional law, the traditional customs of the Old Testament, and maybe even they go by the Torah, they still affirm Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. So yes, absolutely, I believe that messianic Jews are saved. I do. Nordic, are you looking forward to Zoran Madimi being mayor of NYC? I talked about that earlier. To me, he's going to be, in my opinion, if he gets into power, which I think he probably will, he's going to be NYC's version of Sadiq Khan. That's what he's going to be. He's going to be the Sadiq Khan of New York City. New York City crime is going to skyrocket. There's going to be so many more shootings, stabbings. There's going to be more Islamic terrorism. It's just New York is going to be. You thought 9/11 was bad. Wait till that guy takes power. New York is literally going to be just like London, with Muslim postcode gangs on every corner. The amount of rapes are going to go up. The amount of acid attacks are going to go up. The amount of female genital mutilation is going to go up. The amount of robbings, grooming gangs, pedophilia, things of that nature. All that's going to go up, and that mayor is going to constantly talk about Islamophobia. And New York City Muslims just want to be treated like every other New Yorker. While the imams and the caliphate are talking about exterminating the kuffar and forcing us to pay the jizya. Like the more I think, the more I honestly think, like the more I believe that a crusade is necessary to just exterminate Islam. Like Islam should literally be exterminated from society. If you're a Muslim, you should be deported instantly. Your whole family should be deported to some shithole in the Middle East. And again, whatever happens to you over there is your own fault for allowing yourself to be indoctrinated like that. Yeah, there are Messianic Jews that are not in favor of the Israeli regime. It's funny how we call out others for their behavior, but never looked at themselves. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I know. That look, a lot of people on the right don't want to. They don't have any self awareness. They like to point the finger at Israel without pointing the finger at their own problems personally. Yeah, that's because we're all sinners. Yeah, exactly. Apologies, right? Every single one of us is a sinner, right? If we judge the world by our own standard, nothing's going to make any sense. The only standard that you can judge the world by is Jesus Christ. That's it. Jesus Christ's standard is the only one that matters because his standard is perfect. And he died for that standard. He died for our sins. Who's better, Kobe, LeBron? No idea. I don't watch basketball. Many people don't realize Charlie was slowly turning on Israel. Yeah, he never mocked the Palestinians. Yeah, Charlie said we should stop funding. Charlie's official words were he said it should have been dealt with already. He was saying Hamas should have been dealt with right after October 7th, and we should have stopped donating money to Israel and solving all their problems. He also talked about how Benjamin Netanyahu and his party deliberately stood down and deliberately dragged out the conflict and basically made it into a proxy war in the Middle East to keep embezzling money and keep funding that war. That's literally what it was, right? So that they could keep killing civilians. Charlie openly admitted that Benjamin Netanyahu and his faction want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. He admitted that openly. Okay, so again, You wonder why the ADL, you know, labeled Charlie a terrorist and a threat to democracy. Well, there you are. That's why. That's the real reason why, you know. Israel doesn't have the right to exist because it was founded on and exists as a continuous genocide. The Palestinians wouldn't kill the Israelis. That's okay, mate. You are just talking absolute bollocks. See if you really believe that. You know absolutely nothing about the situation, and I'm starting to wonder if you're a Muslim. I'm starting to wonder if you're a Muslim because to suggest that if the state of Israel, and again, you look, you can believe they don't have the right to exist. That's fine. I'm not criticizing you for that. That's your opinion. Lots of people on the right believe that. What I'm saying is, if you believe that if the state of Israel stopped fighting, laid down their arms, opened the borders, and all that stuff, you're telling me the people of Gaza wouldn't nuke them off the face of the planet? Are you telling me they wouldn't march into Israel, rape and murder and behead every single Jew and every single Christian and every single non-Muslim in that region and take the spoils of war, take establish a slave state, just like they did in Lebanon, for example, and force the survivors to pay the jizya and to work as slaves? If you're really suggesting to me that wouldn't happen, either you know nothing about Islam or you yourself are a Pakistani Muslim who's literally just engaging in dawah. That's what you're doing with that comment, I suspect. Engaging in dawah deception, okay? Because that is a stupid thing to say. That's a stupid comment. The Palestinians wouldn't kill the Israelis. Did you literally see how the people of Gaza reacted in the aftermath of October 7? Did you see them dancing in the street, laughing their heads off hysterically at those people who got raped and murdered on October 7th? Did you not see that? Did you not see the citywide or nationwide celebrations that went on in Gaza as a result of that unprovoked terror attack? That was the worst terror attack since 9/11. It was the worst terror attack most of the people in this chat have seen throughout their lifetimes. And you're honestly going to tell me that if Israel laid down its arms, that there wouldn't be a caliphate? I mean, come on, man. That's an embarrassing comment, man. Sorry to say this, embarrassing comment. Absolutely embarrassing. Candace's husband is apparently friends with Andrew Tate. Yeah, that should raise a lot of flags. And look, Andrew Tate, again, I talked about Candace being an obvious shill, obvious controlled opposition. To me, an obvious infiltrator, right? Andrew Tate is even more obvious. He's even more so on the extreme of that standard. Like Andrew Tate is a complete piece of shit. Don't get me wrong, he's funny. Like Andrew Tate, you could follow Andrew Tate ironically and listen to him ironically and find the guy funny. You could. I no issue, kind of like you do with Alex Jones, right? But do not trust Andrew Tate. Don't hang your hat on Andrew Tate. That guy is the most obvious CIA plan I've ever come across in my life. Don't trust a word that guy says. You know, he's Tommy Robinson on steroids. Candace Owens ruining our bloodline, and she never criticizes Tate. Yeah, she had nothing to say about Andrew Tate literally being a slave owner and being caught up in the porn industry and things of that nature. Like she had nothing to say about that, despite supposedly being this traditional stay-at-home trad wife, right? She had nothing to say about Andrew Tate being a complete dirtbag in the way he treats women. I mean, does it surprise you that Andrew Tate decided to convert to Islam? Does it surprise you? Do you think Andrew Tate believes in Allah? And do you think he actually supports the Prophet Muhammad? No, he's using Islam as a tool to justify how he treats women. That's why he converted to Islam. Okay. Again, I'm still going crazy over that comment. The idea that the Palestinians, that the Sunni Muslims in Palestine, who literally support the political faction Hamas, a officially registered terrorist organization, you're telling me that they wouldn't murder and exterminate, or at least support the murder and the subjugation of all Jews in that region? You're honestly trying to say that? I mean, I can't get my head around the stupidity of that comment. Again, people don't realize what an evil death cult Islam is. They don't realize it. Even Muslims don't realize it. You ask your average Muslim, about Muhammad. They don't know anything about the guy. They don't know that he was a slave owner. They don't know that he was white, that he was ginger, that he had a gangbang in the desert with 30 men. They don't know that. They don't know that he was demon possessed, that he tried to commit suicide. They don't know that he married a 6-year-old and had sex with her when she was 9. They don't know that he slept with 9 wives in the same day, that he encouraged his followers to beat their wives and their sex slaves, that he had numerous Jewish and Christian villages violently subjugated. They don't know that he died by being poisoned by a Jewish woman whose husband he had murdered. You ask any, they don't know that he walked around covered in semen. Like you ask any Mohammedan about this, or your average Muslim, they don't even know this stuff. And I've got people in my comment trying to tell me that the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza, have no ill will towards the civilians in Israel. Really, like, come on, man. I can't get my head around this. You guys have got to be Pakistani Muslims. Some of you. Yeah, your name's awesome. Of course it is. Oil drilling white nationalist. Why not? Only way to stop Islam is if we have the mindset of the Knights Templars before there. Yeah, exactly. The only like practical way to actually stop Islam is to have another crusade. Literally to have another crusade. That's all, because it's all well and good evangelizing to Muslims, and there's plenty of apostates, when they get access to information. But the vast majority of Muslims around the world don't have an internet connection, don't have access to the Bible, don't have access to evangelism, don't have access to Christian missionaries, because whenever that stuff enters that region, they get killed. You try to take Christian evangelism to places like Lebanon or Afghanistan, you will get executed and stoned to death or whatever. Like you'll get beheaded, you'll get shot. Like you would not be able to do that there for very long. So the only way to actually exterminate Islam would be a modern day crusade. That would be and look, I would be sympathetic to the idea. I would be sympathetic to the idea, put it that way. I'm not calling for it because I'm not a utopian. I don't believe in utopias, but I'd be sympathetic to the cause, sympathetic to the idea, Islam, honestly, is cancer on society. Like, I don't see how there's people on the left who, people on the right who are vehemently opposed to the left, but they're in support of Islam. How can you be that stupid? You don't think Islam is worse than the left? You don't think the Islamic Caliphate would do worse things to you than the left? I assure you they will. Okay. Tate defo has dirt on Candace or her husband. Yeah, he probably knows through his CIA connections that she's a shill. It's probably what it is. Or maybe Islam will stop itself with the avalanche of apostasy. Even the Taliban's worried about. Again, like I said, look, the avalanche of apostasy is real, right? But it's not. The avalanche of apostasy is not enough. It's not enough of an avalanche to combat the caliphate. It's not enough of an avalanche to combat mass immigration and mass, attempts at assimilation, which turns into segregation. It can't stop that. Okay. Again, the prison system in the UK is literally a breeding ground, or more specifically, a recruiting ground for Islamic terrorism. Okay. You go into any working class community in the UK, and most of the businesses are owned by Muslims. Like, it's horrible. The amount of corner shops they own, the amount of supermarkets they own, just the crimes that they perpetuate, all the grooming gangs and the institutions that protect them, the amount of plants that they have in government. Like, people don't realize how powerful the Islamic colonialization of our nations is. Like, they don't realize how big of a problem it is. I would like to know how many Jews believe in the bag of shit that is the Talmud. Not many of them, believe it or not. But again, those that do, not our allies at all. Any Jew that goes by the Talmud is likely a secular atheist Jew. And essentially, they're not our ally, like I said. Yeah, the mayor of New York. But again, he's going to be, in my opinion, he's going to be New York's Sadiq Khan. He's their version of Sadiq Khan. Yeah, of course, Islam is not compatible with the West. Islam is an evil death cult. That's what it is, founded by a pedophile and a slave owner and an absolute dirtbag of a human being. That's what Islam is. It's an evil death cult. You cannot coexist with it. Okay, anybody calling themselves a conservative yet supporting Islam in any way, shape, or form is an idiot and should be ousted from the movement. Yeah, it's calling for a caliphate. Yeah, they can't stop Israel again, but it makes you wonder about Israel, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if the and don't get me wrong, look, the founders of Israel were evil. I'm not going to say like people like Ben Gurion and whatnot. The Jews of the time were evil terrorists who fought against the British Empire, who attempted to mediate that region, right? But you have to wonder if even the craziest, like most like violent Jews of the early 20th century had a point when they talked about how it was ordained by God for the Jews to rule that land, because despite how small Islam is, despite how small the state of Israel is and how it's constantly fighting for its own existence, it still is able to survive and thrive. How is that? Like, it's possibly an act of God. You never know. I might trigger a couple of groypers by saying that, but hey, I wouldn't rule out the idea that the very existence of the state of Israel is a miracle. I wouldn't rule that idea out. Israel cannot confirm essay or child beheading happening on October 7th. What do you mean it couldn't confirm it? Bloody videos all over the place. Sucks that I gotta miss most of it. Yeah, don't worry about it, man. It's all good. Can always catch up another time. Yeah, work comes first, man. You gotta pay your bills. It's all good, man. Shmuley said they were playing with a Jewish woman's bloody tits. Well, there was a lot of stuff like that. A lot of stuff like that happened in that attack. It was horrible. Horrible. Don't know how you could see that and not feel something. Yeah, yeah. Well, on social media, when you get the so-called trad wives, they're mostly just actors. They're cosplaying as a traditional conservative woman, and they're just using it to make money. Yeah, Muhammad was a white man with red hair and a beard, a red beard. That's what like Muhammad was. Muhammad was. A lot of people don't even know that. I think there's about 7 or 8 verses in the Quran that talk about the whiteness of Muhammad's skin and how he was white as milk and things of that nature. He was a very very pale individual, and his descendants were all pale too, which is quite interesting. I'm not a Muslim, but it's you who seems to know very little because you need looking into Nakba, the founding event of Israel. Mate, I've read all about that. I know pretty much everything about it. I've talked about it openly on my stream numerous times. Look, mate, how many times have I said on here that the state of Israel, like I talked about it like 2 or 3 streams ago, the state of Israel was founded on terrorism. Okay, when the British Empire used to rule that region, let's not forget, right? The British Empire tried to mediate over the Holy Land, right, which is what we now call Israel. They used to call it the Holy Land, okay? And you had numerous factions vying for power in that land. You had the people of Jordan and Syria and Lebanon, the people of Iraq and whatnot, all thought that they owned that land. You had the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, but the Jews were the most violent of all of those groups in those days at that particular point in history, right? Because they believed that they were ordained by God to rule that land. So they committed numerous murders and numerous acts of terrorism, and it was through violent terrorism that they were able to drive out the British, drive out the Americans, and they were able to hold the Islamic Middle East at bay, right? So yeah, I know exactly I know who Ben Gurion was. I know how the state of Israel was founded, and I know about a lot of the factions there. Okay, there was communist factions in the state of Israel. They had an uneasy alliance with the Soviet Union. Okay, they went to war with Syria. They went to war with Jordan. Okay, there was so much bloodshed in that region, and there has been all throughout history. Okay, it doesn't just go back the past 75 years. It goes back to the days of Saladin and the Crusades and whatnot, and even before. So I know about that. Now Hamas, okay, Hamas are literally, again, you said Hamas themselves only call for the 67 board. I don't care. Listen, Hamas are Islamic fundamentalists, right? Or more specifically, they're Orthodox Islam. Okay, They want to violently subjugate the entire non-Muslim world. The only reason they call for 67 borders, whatever it is you want to say, that's them being pragmatic. That's them playing politics, right? You don't think that the leaders of Hamas are shrewd politicians? You don't think that they are? How do you think they were able to get so much support in that region? Okay, they know to say the right things. That's dawah. That's what I was talking about earlier. Dawah. Dawah is all about deception. It's an Islamic concept, okay? The idea of using deception to worm your way into society. And then when you've gained enough power, that's when you violently subjugate that society. Now, I believe personally, as did Charlie Kirk, as do a lot of people on the right, I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu and his party, right, his right wing conservative support, and obviously I'm talking about it from an Israeli point of view, right? They're ostensibly the right wing conservative Israeli party, right? They're the ones who have an emergency government, and they are not particularly supported in Israel. Most of the civilians in Israel do not support Benjamin Netanyahu and his party, right? But I digress. I believe they allowed, possibly even called for Hamas to do what they did on October 7. I believe they allowed it to happen to justify their ethnic cleansing of Gaza, right? I do believe that the political factions in both Palestine and Israel work together against the people. I do believe that. But to state that Hamas or any Orthodox Muslim, anybody who actually follows Muhammad, is in any way, shape, or form redeemable in that sense, like without literally repenting and turning to Christ, is insane. And to suggest that they wouldn't exterminate and violently subjugate every single Jew and every single Muslim is insane. It's insane to even suggest that. It is. Muhammad can be anything you want. Oil driller. Yeah, Muhammad was an oil driller because he banged a lot of Arabs and he owned a lot of black slaves and he called them raisin heads. A lot of people don't realize that. That's the ironic thing about the, what do you call it, the black Hebrew Israelites. They don't seem to notice that Muhammad owned like numerous black slaves and was horribly racist to them, They don't seem to realize that. October 7th was Israelis dancing and playing a shitty gay techno outside a concentration camp and getting the smallest taste of what their government does to Palestinians every day. But again, I'm not saying that the Israeli government doesn't. I'm not saying that they don't bomb civilians. Evidently, they do. All right, just look at an aerial shot of the state of Palestine, particularly Gaza. Right, there's hardly any buildings left. My point is, what Hamas did, that was not an indicate. That was not a retaliation, and that was not something that was done specifically to motivate a political goal. That literally is Islam. Go back to the very founding of Islam, okay, to the 7th century when Muhammad, was actually alive, when he founded the religion of Islam. That is what they do, okay? The followers of Muhammad violently subjugated every single non-Muslim region that they could, raped their people, murdered them, butchered them, spread their religion by the sword. That's what Islam is. That's what will happen to us if Hamas, if again the Labour Party recognizes Palestine as a state, right, bending the knee to Hamas, right. If that happens, that's already happened, right. That's only that's a small step for the Islamic Caliphate and what's happening, because they're flooding our countries with mass immigration. They're taking over communities, businesses. They're growing economically all over the world, and Dawa is really, really taking off. Okay, and once they gain enough power, October 7 will seem like a very, very small thing indeed compared to what's going to happen. Okay, like, man, these guys are really, really scaring me. With the lack of, I don't know, just the lack of understanding of what it is they're saying. Trad wives, half-hearted. Yeah. If you're not married and you don't have kids, how are you a trad wife? It doesn't make any sense. How are you a trad wife if you're not married and you don't have kids? Yeah, Queers for Palestine, another like ridiculous subversion. I mean, queers would literally get thrown off a rooftop in Palestine. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Just return. Would you say Nordic Keir Starmer is the worst prime minister in recent heart? I wouldn't say anything. Do you know what? Ironically, no. I would say David Cameron was a lot worse. a lot worse than Keir Starmer. I'm not even joking. I think David Cameron is possibly the worst prime minister the UK's ever had. David Cameron was an evil, subhuman, leftist piece of crap. Now, I'm not saying that Keir Starmer isn't that. He certainly is, but I mean, Keir Starmer doesn't seem as far left to me, or as just insane to me. At least Keir Starmer will sit down with someone like Donald Trump and we'll have a cordial conversation and at least pretend to give a shit. He pretend to give a crap about his own people. David Cameron would have his rhetoric would have made the relationship and the situation a lot worse. Yeah, I hate it when they say Islam is right about women. Cringe, yeah. And I do think when a lot of people say that, though, I feel like they're joking because they can't really mean that. Because Islam literally depicts women as having no souls and as literally just being like pieces of furniture to just again you've seen, I'm assuming you've seen some of the videos, the violent videos of some of the when when the Islamic world, when some of their imams and whatnot, some of their influencers teach their followers how to discipline their wives, like hold them up against a wall and like beat their faces in, punch their lights out and all that for speaking out of line or something. Like that's literally how women are treated. You see, women are literally sold off at like 5 years old to get married to some pedophile in a business transaction. That's literally again, to take that view on women, I don't see how you can be a conservative and believe that about women. I genuinely don't. I don't know who Keith Wood is. Sorry. The apostasy is accelerating massively. Some mosques are empty, but I reckon Muslims are brainwashed. Well, again, look, a lot of people in the Islamic world would literally rather blow up their own families than sit down and talk to someone and have a discussion, because that's how brainwashed they are and how far gone they are, really. Now, shout out to Sven Otke. God bless you, man. Sorry if I'm combative. No, that's fine. I just have to disagree. And Shmuley and Israelis are liars. Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying they're not liars. Again, I'm not saying that I support the state of Israel. Again, the state of Israel, as I said earlier, was funded or was founded on terrorism, right? It literally was from the very beginning. But I guess we'll disagree about Islam and the peaceful coexistence that you seem to think is possible with the followers of Muhammad. We'll disagree on that, I guess. Will that mosque be demolished eventually? And Tommy never stuck up for us when they said British will burn in hell. Well, that's not going to happen to me, I tell you that, because Jesus Christ died for my sins. The Talmud is composed the rabbinic debates and oral law from Mount Sinai. A Jew that accepts it wouldn't be secular. Well, no. What I mean by that is, I may have worded that wrong. What I mean by that is they would use it to they would pretend to be a religious Jew, and really they're using it to advance a political position, like to try and exterminate Christianity, for example. I'm not saying that there aren't like religious Jews who do go by the Talmud. There are some, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that the ones you would have heard about, right, the ones that get involved in politics, are generally secular. They're people like Benjamin Netanyahu, for example, right, and Ben Gurion, for example, who was one of the founders of Israel. He was definitely a secular atheist Jew. Netanyahu allowed his own people to be massacred to avoid jail. He's a scumbag. Yeah, he allowed his own people to be massacred because he was on the verge of being ousted and kicked out of his own position. But he needed to establish an emergency government to prevent that from happening. Right? I believe, and again, Charlie Kirk believed this too, that is why October 7th was given the go-ahead. It doesn't have to be that Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF and whatnot ordered the attack. I believe they allowed the attack to take place for that very reason, Random question. Have you played Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes? Loads of edits of Leon Kennedy on TikTok because the main character has a hairstyle and is good looking. I've not played the remakes, no. The last Resident Evil game I played was Resident Evil 7. And I thought about reviewing it. I actually do quite like that. It's a good game, in my opinion. Yeah, that's what Muhammad called black people. He called them raisin heads. Go look it up. What What do you mean did they kill JFK? You mean Israel? Did Israel kill JFK? I have no idea who killed JFK, and neither does anyone else. And I don't think they'll ever release the files on that. Do you think DC will ever make an entertaining movie again? No, because all their movies will be funded by BlackRock, so they'll produce nothing but degeneracy. So no, I don't think so. I've said for years that at some point this country there will be a day when hundreds of terror attacks take place on the same day, thousands will die. Leftists will still defend them. Yeah. Well, I mean, leftists defended Hamas when they butchered those people in Israel, didn't they? They again playing with a dead woman's tits and putting her head on a spike and all that, like dragging her through the street, tied to the back of a truck. Literally just murdering civilians at some concert. Even in the UK, we had people blown up in concert halls, kids and whatnot. We've had, get people stabbed in the street walking their dog and things like that. And the left don't care. Of course they don't. Why would they? Because they're evil, satanic reprobates. That's what the left are. Okay. It doesn't surprise me that they align themselves with Islam. Okay. Doesn't surprise me one bit. I remember your video on black fatigue. Even other minorities are fed up with them. Yeah, a lot of them are, true. A lot of them. Look at the way the Chinese act around a lot of them now. It's kind of sad. I saw a guy the other day with a hammer and a sickle rucksack. He was scrawny little specky scroll, a typical commie. Yeah, yeah, sounds the type, doesn't he? Muslims in the States are very chaotic. In the States, all they do is rep gang culture, smoke weed, drink, hang around corners. Mostly in New Jersey and New York. Well, the same over here. I mean, there's so many Muslim gangs over here that just, again, a lot of them are postcode gangs who will just attack you for walking through and not being from there. It doesn't happen so much in Scotland because there's not as much of them, but in England, it's really bad. Like any Islamic community in England is just an absolute shithole. Any one of them. Rabbi Shmuley is playing a character. I think he's so over the top that I can't believe he's real. No, I think he's a troll. He's a funny troll, a really good troll. I'll tell you that. Like, I think Rabbi Shmuley is one of the funniest satires out there. He's kind of like that Alex Stein guy, but a little bit more committed to his character. Yeah, that's fine. No worries. Yeah, Cenk from the Young Turks. He debated him, didn't he? Al-Aqsa Mosque is where the temple will be to bring the Antichrist. Do you know, it wouldn't surprise me, but again, none of us really know that, do we? Throughout history, the colonizers have perpetuated the myth of the colonized slaughtering them and imagined reprisals. While they slaughter the colonized, in reality, that's Israeli. Well, I don't know who you're talking about specifically. Colonizers have perpetuated the myth of the colonized slaughtering them. Who are you talking about? Because that could be in reference to any point throughout history. Okay, colonization has happened again, probably since the days of ancient Babylon or before. And then it's not always a bad thing. Okay, colonization is, in a lot of cases, it's a good thing. Okay, in America, for example, when you had the heathen, pagan, child sacrificing, degenerate troglodytes, aka the Native Americans, what some people call them, or the Indians. Again, literally child sacrificing troglodytes who had no understanding of the very concept of society, law and order, any of that stuff. And when they were colonized by the British, was that a bad thing? Was it really? When the British went in there and established colonies, and established New England and whatnot. Was that a bad thing when they brought law and order to that region, and when they exterminated the most violent remnants of that barbaric culture, that heathen pagan culture? Was that a bad thing? Was it? Because I would argue no. When the British Empire colonized India, again, the kinds of people who just defecate in the street and lick cow anuses and drink the piss of camels and whatever it is they do, have an annual cow poop fight and things of that nature. Most of them end up dying by the age of 20 of poor sanitation and things of that nature. It's the rape capital of the world. When the British Empire went in and brought civilization and culture to that land and exterminated the degenerates who fought back against it, is that a bad thing? I mean, colonization is not inherently a bad thing. Now, I would argue that Islamic colonization, like what happened in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, Portugal as well, like in a different part of the world, um, Jordan, um, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, um, Bulgaria, like again, all these countries all across Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, who were literally colonized by Islam, where the people were violently subjugated and murdered. Civilized people were taken over by savage, like by barbarian savages. That's an example of bad colonialism. Okay, colonialism that caused the retaliation of the Crusades, right? So it really depends on the context. When you're talking about colonization, just saying colonization, in a negative context is kind of intellectually dishonest, if you ask me. But I don't see any colonization right now coming from the state of Israel. What I see is one particular state that they believe is that they are destined to rule by the grace of God, right? They believe it's their state. It's a state that you either believe has the right to exist or doesn't. If you believe it doesn't have the right to exist, then you support terrorism. You support it being nuked off the map, essentially, or you take a more modest view on it, right? Which is what I do. Which is where the state obviously exists. It's existed for over 75 years. There's lots of civilians there. They have a culture. They have different factions like any other country. And I wouldn't be okay with the idea of them being violently subjugated by Islam. I don't see how anybody could. I don't see how anybody could argue for that. Unironically. Cenk is more weird that Shmuley advocated for legalizing animal molestation. Yeah, I think Mossad and the CIA killed JFK. Yeah, I also think Mossad killed Epstein. I mean, let's not forget. One thing that I find strange that nobody talks about pretty much, except maybe someone like Mark Dice. He talked about this, is how Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was a Mossad agent supposedly, right? And she was of course Jeffrey Epstein's assistant. She was very, very deep in his counsel. I find it very, very hard to believe that Mossad weren't behind a lot of what Epstein was doing, essentially, because a lot of people generally believe Epstein was an intelligence agent, right, who was possibly working on behalf of Israeli intelligence, and that they had something to do with getting rid of him to tie up loose ends. I don't know, but it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It really does. Thoughts on JD Vance versus leftists in 2028? JD Vance? Well, who's he going to run against though? Like, who's JD Vance actually going to run against? Like, is he going to run against Kamala? Because if he does, then he might have a good chance of winning, But I don't know. Maybe he'll run against Bernie Sanders or someone. Who knows? Yeah, that's true. A lot of them are. Yeah. I like JD Vance and Marco Rubio for VP. Stephen Miller has a fire in his belly over Charlie's murder. He isn't like most Jews that are very left-wing and anti-white. Yeah, well, again, look, whatever the alternative is, I don't think it can be any worse. Is all I'm going to say. Like again, I'm not 100% convinced by JD Vance, because again, the guy marry an Indian woman or something like that, and he's said a few suspect things, but again, look, he's probably a pragmatic choice at the moment, and he could just be a young guy to get the young conservatives on board and be a bit of a figurehead while his administration does most of the work and makes most of the decisions. Have you seen Nick Griffin's Substack and Twitter? I've seen his Twitter account, yeah, not his Substack. Stephen Miller is one of the good Jews, in my opinion. Unfortunately, so many of them are Bolshevik commies. Yeah, they are. Yeah, true. And let's not forget, those were the people who invaded Russia. Those were the people who took over Russia and turned it into the Soviet Union. It was the Bolsheviks, right? So Let's not let them do the same to us if we can avoid it. Indians are so bitter towards Britain because we conquered 500 million of them with 3,000 soldiers. Well, in India is an absolute shithole. It's always been a shithole. It's never been a good country. The only shred of culture they've ever had, and the only shred of anything resembling law and order they ever had was under the British Empire. So I'm not surprised that those degenerates are angry at Britain. They should be thanking Britain for giving them culture and giving them something to think about, instead of cow dung there's something about India and just being obsessed with like cow asses and cow shit and all that. I don't know what it is. What a culture to hang your hat on. The kinds of people that throw poop at each other like actual monkeys. Honestly, like how disgusting is India? And for an Indian to say anything even remotely critical of a Brit is hilarious and ironic to me, Bunch of wrong uns. Like if you're Indian, you should literally thank the British for teaching you how to be a functioning human being. You should, Just look at the state of India today. Yeah, it's rubbish and poop everywhere, and people hanging off trains and when wherever they go, they just make it worse. They just go around molesting women and stuff. That's all they do. They act like animals. A lot of them. They want a greater Israel stealing more Arab land. Well, possibly. Wouldn't be the worst thing, would it? I mean, I would rather an Israeli empire in the Middle East than anything resembling Islam. I would rather that. I don't believe they are trying to establish greater Israel anytime soon, since they would need to go to war with massive and powerful countries like Egypt and Turkey. There's no way they can win. Look, Israel is too small. Okay, so any evil that's congregating in Israel is too small to subjugate the world. That's not the case with the Islamic world. The subjugation is happening right before our eyes. Indians in Europe, America, white countries hate white people because they all look like British colonizers to them, regardless of ethnicity. They view their rising influence as revenge. Yeah. Revenge for what, though? For teaching them to not eat cow dung, to not cover themselves in cow dung and die by the age of 20 of cholera and all the other diseases they get over there. Like, it doesn't surprise me that so many people in India are scammers. You see, if you get a phone call and the guy on the phone has an Indian accent, just hang up or scream into his ear, then hang up. Like, just because again, so many Indians are scammers. Mossad were 100% behind Epstein. Is why no politician backs Israel, no matter what. Mossad has black tape mails of them raping children. Yeah, I've believed that for a while. I have. Leftists have no consistent standard. They say people are on stolen land, but then they say they believe in open borders. Well, so they're on stolen land. So if a leftist lives in the UK or lives in America, they're living on stolen land, so they should leave. So they should go live somewhere else. They should go and drown themselves in the ocean or whatever. I mean, wouldn't be the worst thing, would it? Again, they live on stolen land. They're enjoying the fruits of capitalism on stolen land. So every single leftist should lead by example and drown themselves in the ocean or just leave, go and live somewhere else. Just bugger off, go and live somewhere else, and go and live in some pigsty over in India, and then tell us what a great communist you are. Oh, you got a new account. I'll need to go and follow that. There's always videos on Twitter of Indians getting hit by trains. The train is the apex predator in India. Yeah, they like hang off it and everything. It's funny, like because they don't understand that when there's already too many people on the train, you can't fit. You got to wait for the next one. They would rather hang off the train and possibly die, or get like pooped on by a donkey or a camel or something, or a cow. Seriously, what a bunch of wrong-uns, honestly. They even pretend to be something they're not, those Indians. Yeah. Pretend to be monkeys throwing poop at each other. Indians and foreigners in general despise white people while living in white countries. Mass deportations are needed. Well, why are they in white countries? They're in white countries because the white countries are better. Why are the white countries better? Let's think about it. So let's do the math. So lots and lots of white people, good country, clean, lots of culture, good food, good law and order, all that good stuff. Lots and lots of Indians poop everywhere, and the average age of 30, people dying of disease, licking cow anuses and getting pooped on by cows and all that, like throwing poop at each other, getting hit by trains and all that. Wow, what a great! I'm starting to notice something. What a great culture. India hasn't even built any new trains. They still have the same trains and the tracks from the British Empire. Yeah, any bridges that they have or any buildings that aren't mud huts are probably made from the British Empire. They still got a lot of call centers though. I told them that. Yeah, those Indians can't even maintain the trains and they sit on top of them thinking it's a seat. Yeah. Or they just sit on the track and they don't realize that if the train hits them, they're going to die. That's how stupid they are. Did you see the leaked Dinesh D'Souza text with Charlie Kirk? Yeah, yeah, I did. I did see that, I believe. Even the train hates them. Yeah, yeah, even the train hates the Indians. That is a good one. The train is the apex predator in India. That's pretty funny. I remember watching Top Gear's Indian special. The roads were incredibly dangerous, and they were pretty bad. Yeah, death traps. They were. Of course they were, because they don't have the British Empire to maintain them. You know, and they stand on their food and everything. Yeah, they worship the elephant god. Yeah, they're pagans. They worship all these stupid like gods that look like something out of an anime. The documentary also showed them pissing on roads and dogs passing in the food. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what they do. Ukraine is losing badly now against Russia. I think the war will be over by 2027, as they're about to lose defense of their big cities. Well, look, Project Ukraine was a massive proxy war to get as many white Christians killed as possible. And let's not forget that it should have ended in the first couple of weeks. It should have been allowed to reach its natural conclusion. But Project Ukraine happened. They kept funding Ukraine. They kept giving them missiles, giving them a false sense of hope, thinking we're going to defeat Russia. Ukraine's going to win, as if that was ever possible. And now hundreds of thousands of young white Christians have murdered each other for literally nothing. Literally nothing. No more brother wars. That's what I say. The train is British. That's why it hates them. Yeah, Thomas the Tank Engine, innit? It's going to run down all them Indians. And then the cows will just come and poop on them afterwards. You'll have an Indian elite in America very shortly if immigration isn't capped. I'd rather the Jews. Hey, listen, I would take 1,000 Jews over like 20 Indians in my country. I would, you know. The Jews will bring the Indians in. Yeah. Or they'll send them over here instead of Israel. And if you suspect anyone on social media being Indian, just ask them to curse Vishnu. And if they don't, it's an Indian. Yeah. I am a lean, mean, vindaloo machine. Do you guys ever play The Simpsons Hit and Run? You can play as a poo. And if you run over like a lamppost or a garbage can or something, it will say something like, "This is between me and you, random object." I am a lean, mean, vindaloo machine. Oh, that was funny. Nick Fuentes has asked his followers to vote for Democrats multiple times, and he has multiple gay friends, lovers. He's a paid actor. It's so obvious just by the way he speaks. Owens is no different. Yeah. Again, look, I feel like Nick Fuentes, there's something really off about him. And I feel like he's being used to, like, I know I've said it multiple times in this live already. I think he's being used to drive a wedge through the conservative movement. I don't particularly trust him one bit. Look, with Candace Owens, I think it's a little bit more obvious, but with Nick Fuentes, I think it's just sad, man. I really do. Yeah, Vance will probably win the election. Again, we couldn't do any worse, could we? With what we've got to offer in the American political sphere right now, we could do a lot worse, couldn't we? I mean, out of every country Nordic, which would be the most likely one that the UK would go to war with? The UK's gone to war with numerous countries.
numerous, but the politicians right now, at least in the Labour Party, seem to want to go to war with Israel. The Tory Party seems to want to go to war with Russia. Probably Russia because everybody hates Russia, don't they? So probably Russia. Most of Fuentes' followers are just brown people who hate Jews. Yeah, they're probably undercover Muslims or like undercover Muslims, or they're literally just like a bunch of like autists on the internet who have got Israel as their particular obsession. They've got Israel fatigue, I guess. And again, it's like these people have literally, I mean, calling yourself a groiper, like actually identifying as that, and seeing this 27-year-old, possibly gay, really really awkward guy in Nick Fuentes as as your figurehead. I can't get my head around that. Again, I don't even hate Nick Fuentes. I don't dislike the guy even. I just feel like the guy's a bit of a ridiculous figure, if truth be told. Like he's a bit of a joke is what he's been made into, and he's made his followers into jokes too. Speaking of trains and buses, kids in the UK, especially from schools, are genuinely so annoying. Swearing, young kids, parents get angry. Yeah, do you know? Look, see, one of the worst things that the Scottish government did under Nicola Sturgeon was they gave school children free bus passes. Now, ostensibly, that seems like a good thing. It seems like an act of charity, right? Give them free bus passes. They can get the bus to school. Now, when I was a kid, we had school buses. So that wasn't a concern, right? You paid a certain amount and you got a pass for a school bus, right? It wasn't expensive. Anyone could afford it, right? But now they just let them use commercial buses, right? So see when you go to work, and let's say it's 3 o'clock and you want to get home from work. Have you any idea how much congestion there is on the roads? And you know why? Because some stupid little twat school kid will get on the bus, go one stop, and then get off. Another group of kids will come on, smoke a couple of vapes, get off two stops later, and then cause a big argument. And literally, the bus like goes along the road at a snail's pace. It stops at every stop because some stupid school kid wants to get on, swear, cause a bunch of trouble, then get off a stop later. They don't even need the bus. Like most kids go to school within walking distance of where they live. So they don't need transport. The only way that you need to get the bus to school is if you live in a different postcode, right? You live in a different area. If you don't walk to school, it's not difficult, you know. But the Scottish government gave school kids free bus passes, so you can't even get a bus without it being swarmed with school kids at a particular time, and it causes all this congestion on the roads. And again, they act so rude and disrespectful, and they cause so much drama. Like it's horrible, man. That's one of the worst things the Scottish government ever did, in my opinion. It's truly awful. I'm just going for a pee. I'll be back in a minute.
Now, as you guys could probably imagine, that was a little bit long for just doing a P, wasn't it? Turned out I needed a number 2. So yeah, I bet you guys are glad I never took the stream into the toilet, because you wouldn't have liked it. Yeah, they are. I don't think Fuentes is an actor. I think he's clearly just a self-hating gay man. Yeah, maybe he's both. Who knows? It feels like there's been a decrease in respect nowadays in culture. Society seems to be more impatient and rude. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Like I was saying earlier, again, when you hear kids talking and the kind of vulgar stuff that they say, like when I was a kid, if I spoke like that, I'd have gotten bitch slapped for it. I'd have never got away with that, with the kind of stuff that they say nowadays, and it seems to be so much worse on public transport. Something about public transport is just vile, you know, having to deal with it. And again, giving them free bus passes, it's literally the dumbest thing that the Scottish government under Nicola Sturgeon ever did. Because again, not only does it cause congestion, it means that when you're on your way home from work after a hard shift, you got to deal with some 10-year-old kid sitting talking about sucking another kid's dick or something. You got to sit and listen to that, you know, and while they're vaping and stuff on the bus. It's horrible. He said dating women is gay. What? Nick Fuentes said that. Oh, why does that not surprise me? Pot calling kettle black, you know. Is North Korea based? No. North Korea is a degenerate dictatorship, you know. But it's I'm not gonna lie though, I kind of like Kim Jong Un just because I find him funny. Like Kim Jong Un is hilarious. He is. He's a funny guy. He's like Eric Cartman or something. Just one look at that guy, and even though he's like a crazy ass dictator, he's too funny to really hate. He's just such a funny guy. Yeah, yeah. The Russian accent is pretty cool, no doubt about it. Like, I am Dmitry Chudinov. I don't know. Give me some vodka. We have some Russian vodka. Yes, comrade. Yes. Like I have them in my sights, comrade. Did you ever play? Did you ever play Hogs of War, the video game? And like it was like 2 British guys, I think, that did all the voices in that game, and like the Russian voice they did was hilarious. It wasn't as funny as the Japanese one, though. You know, the Japanese one, they will snap like bamboo in typhoon. It's like, I shoot a real gun. What was it they said? They said, try to think of the best quotes from that game. There was, my preferred form of fighting was a fighting with no actual fighting in it. But yeah, the Russian accent they did was good as well. Did that chatter just say Marco Rubio for VP? The chief neocon clown Marco Rubio, who supports American soldiers dying in the Middle East for no benefit to America. Well, I don't think he's saying he supports him. I think he's just saying that it's possible that he might be the VP. I know what you're saying. Like he's a neocon, whatever. But like, I don't think anybody here is suggesting we actually support them. You know, it's weird how much hatred Western governments have for Russia. I could understand if it was still communist, but it's not anymore. So I can assume it's their refusal to accept degeneracy. There's a lot of reasons for it. Like I'm not saying that Russia is perfect, that it doesn't have its problems, and I'm not saying I support Putin. By the way, I think Putin is a degenerate, right? But again, I don't think that we should see Russia as our enemies to the point where we're willing to go to nuclear war with them. I really don't think that that's practical at all. You know, again, it's not Russia that's flooding our countries with immigrants and threatening our security and things of that nature. There's other places like communist China, on the other hand. I think we should be. I'm not saying we should go to war with them, but we should be absolutely opposed to communist China. They are not our allies at all. Epstein was 100% intel. Probably is really intel. Yeah, of course it was. I mean, again, it's a little bit convenient how Ghislaine Maxwell, her dad is a Mossad agent. I mean, that's a little bit. It's just a little bit a little bit convenient, if you ask me. Most of Fuentes' followers are Arabs, Mexicans who post about Israel 24/7. So many are anti-white. Fuentard won't shut up about the Jews. Self-hating white leftists are the majority. What was that? It was a big ass noise there. Didn't even know what that was. Yeah. While the leftists are the majority of the issue. Yeah, exactly. The majority of the issues we're dealing with, like Islam,
like the LGBT and all this other stuff, like our general culture being taken away from us, like the satanic elite, the education establishment, the entertainment industry, all of this stuff is being openly facilitated by the left. So to focus all of your activism onto onto Israel is counterproductive. And these stupid groypers can't, like, I think a lot of them are autists, right? A lot of them, they can't get Israel out of their head, and it's like everything is Israel. Israel pooped in the hallway. Israel is the reason for all your problems in life. You can't do any self-reflecting. Again, just point the finger at Israel. It's a nice little cop out to have in it. You don't have to do any actual research or do any actual work, because you can just blame everything on Israel. Again, it's a nice convenient little cop out, Yeah, how disgusting is vapes? Like people that vape have got something seriously wrong with them. I've been on packed buses in the soaring summers near heat, going very, very slow. I once ran out of water and dealt like I was gonna. Yeah, I felt like that too. I get travel sick anyway. I hate being in vehicles. See, when it's hot and you're on the bus, it's horrible. And when a bunch of school kids go on and start vaping, makes it worse. Why don't you want to discuss boxing? Because it's boring and irrelevant, and it's just the same shit over and over. It sucks. I'm sick of talking about it. Yeah, of course it is. I don't even watch it anymore. I've not watched a fight in I don't know how long. Boxing is dead. Some things are more important. That bullshit stoppage. But again, is anybody really surprised by a Frank Warren stoppage? Again, I'm not even mad about it. Who cares? British, look, everybody knows. Everybody from like since the 90s onwards knows that in Britain, if the traveling fighter, the guy who's there to fight, the establishment guy, takes a few shots, even if he's winning, he's going to get stopped. The British referee is going to step in and stop the fight. That was probably 80% of Joe Calzaghe's knockouts. Again, I like Joe Calzaghe, don't get me wrong, but about 80% of the knockouts on his record were literally him flailing his arms. Same with Carl Froch. Same with a lot of guys, right? Flailing their arms, and then the referee stops the fight for nothing. That's literally what the vast majority of stoppages were in British boxing. So do you expect me to care? Why did Joseph Parker, the champion, the A-side, okay, the guy with the much better resume, and the guy who is mandatory to fight for the full title, why is he going over to the UK agreeing to fight Fabio Wardley in his backyard? What did he think was going to happen? What did he think it was going to be, a fair, impartial sporting event? No. See, this is what pisses me off. I'm sick of these guys. I'm sick of them. I've got absolutely, not only have I got no interest in boxing, I've got absolutely no sympathy for these foreign fighters who go to the UK, end up with a Howard Foster British stoppage, and then complain about it. I've got no sympathy for them. What did you expect? What, you thought you were going to fight Frank Warren's guy in his backyard, with British officials, and they weren't going to support him? That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not talking about this anymore. I almost said the F word there. I'm trying not to swear. Screw boxing. I mean, the kids surely have to know that acting up, swearing, and being vile in the bus may scare little kids, as if they don't have common sense or just don't care. Yeah, they just don't care because they're probably raised by single mothers or raised by liberals, and they're craving attention. It is. I went for a poo. I went for a big dump. Not gonna lie, though, some bus drivers are assholes. Yeah, well, a lot of bus drivers are assholes. A lot of them. To be fair, I would be miserable if I was a bus driver, so I don't blame them. That'd be a horrible job. I remember seeing people run up to a bus and a bus driver seeing them and driving straight. But yeah, they used to do that to me all the time, like when I was younger. I remember I nearly battered a bus driver once because he robbed me. Like I paid for 2 return tickets, and he only gave us a single, and he told me to piss off or something when I asked him. So I smacked. They've got that like plastic thing. This was like back in 2014 or 15, I think. Right? I was only like 20 or something when this happened. he like he told me, he said something really disrespectful. I was with my missus, and yeah, he robbed me because I paid for 2 return tickets. He refused to give me the proper ticket, and he was acting all hard and all that, as if I wasn't going to do nothing. And then I smacked my fist right into the, do you know, the plastic thing they have, the barrier between them and the customer. I just smacked it full force, and it like nearly knocked it off the thing. And this guy shat himself and slammed on the brakes and started cowering. He was like cowering into the seat. He's like, "I'm phoning the police. I'm phoning the police." I was ready to like cave his head in, and then I ended up just leaving. I was so angry that day. I was. Nordic, have you followed the saga of Stream of Destiny? No, I've not followed it, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's a leftist, isn't he? So of course he's a pedo. I just assume every leftist is a pedo. That's just what I assume. What happened last Saturday didn't in my love for boxing. Well, it didn't make any difference to me because I already know it. How many stoppages have we seen like that? It happens all the time. Again, I'm sick of talking about it. I want to like Nick Fuentes. He loses me with his unfair generalizations of groups, his constant infighting with the right. That says, I think he's funny. He brings a contagious charisma. Yeah, I could see why you'd find him entertaining. He is a funny guy, but I do think he's a bit of a problem for the right. You know, Destiny and Hassan both hating each other is ironic because they're both 100% right each other. Do you know what that reminds me of? I seen a thing. There was some influencer called the Antifa Super Soldier. Look that up. And I didn't know about this, but apparently the Antifa Super Soldier it was like it had a rivalry with Chris Chan. They were both like a couple of like pedo furry weirdos. Apparently they had rivalries with each other and they used to criticize each other, but they both spoke the truth. Yeah. Did you clog the toilet? Just about. Nearly. It was that big. You should have seen the size of it, mate. Do you know it was that big that I didn't even bother using toilet paper afterwards. I went in the shower and I just squatted and I shot the shower into my arsehole to clean it. I'm not even kidding. I literally just did that when the stream was quiet. That's what I went and did. That's why it took me so long. I did a massive dump, jumped into the shower and cleaned my arsehole. That's what I did. I'm sure you guys would have loved to have seen that, but unfortunately, this ain't one of them streams, you know? Not yet, anyway. They are both degenerate, evil scum. Yeah, they are. Like Destiny and Hassan are both evil pieces of shit. I'd say Hassan's probably worse. I mean, that what he did to that dog. Like, see, when I saw that, I actually got angry. I got angry because people kept posting it. I'm like, I don't want to see this. Unless, and I think I said something on Twitter. I'm like, unless you're posting a video of Hassan being beaten to death, I don't want to see anything involving him. I don't want to see photographs of his face. I don't want to see like clips of him abusing the dog. I don't want to see people talking about it. I want to see what happens to him as a result of it. I want to see this guy getting beaten to death or getting executed or something. I don't want to hear about anything else aside from that. So I got annoyed at people posting that all over, you know. I wanted something done about it. I would do it myself if it were in my power, you know. I would. Nick Fuentes has never asked his followers to vote for Democrats. Well, I wouldn't know. It's what I've heard. Hassan needs a dog collar. Yeah, he does. Someone should just beat that guy to death. I'm not even joking. Just beat him to death with extreme prejudice. Punch him until he stops breathing and then keep punching him. Right? That guy needs to go. He needs the death penalty. I'm not even kidding. Yeah. Kim Jong Un's propaganda videos are hilarious. Not only that, like them telling the people of North Korea that his dad invented hamburgers, and he was like born on a mountain with under a twin rainbow. That's hilarious. Like that's so funny. Like it's literally like you can imagine it as like an episode of South Park, but it's actually real. Like it's one of them. America fighting Zionist wars in the Middle East is what caused migrant crisis in Europe, which caused issues. Well, it's one of the things that caused it, but let's not act like a lot of the migrant migration isn't economic. Let's not pretend that there aren't people literally paying thousands of dollars to get on a migrant boat to come over here and claim benefits. North Korea seems to have no soul in that country, all programmed to be little robot. Yeah, it's like it's communism basically. It's like a gulag state, you know. Would you ever do call-ins? Well, I've had panels before, like I can drop the link, but my concern about that is people coming on and just trying to talk a lot of rubbish and you know, you know what I mean. When you let people on, it kind of ruins the stream because a lot of people just want to talk over each other and things like that, and I can't be bothered with that. I'll literally just ban anybody who does that. Any confessions of a late night bouncer? Yeah. Well, in fact, I've got quite an interesting story actually about last weekend. The shithole bar that I'm going to be working in this Friday. I was there last week, right? Last Saturday, actually. And there was a group of druggies in there. Now, I was working with two new people because the guy I normally work with there was off. So I was working with a girl, a 19-year-old girl who had, it was her first day on the job, and some Pakistani guy who was like worse than useless. He might as well not have been there. And there was this group of druggies that were in, and they were going around harassing women, like trying to grab them. Like they were getting coked up in the toilet, and like one of them tried to like hit on one of the bar staff, and was harassing women and all that. And the girl bouncer that I was working with, she was only 19. This girl, and again, it was her first shift. I'm literally showing her around, and this guy tried to hit on her. So I was like, I sent her to the door, and I was like, don't move from that door, stay there. And if anything happens, I'll deal with it. And again, the Pakistani guy I was working with, worse than useless. He might as well not have been there. So basically, this group of druggies, what they were doing got so bad, I had to kick them out. But because I was working myself, basically, I had to be very careful. I couldn't just go and throw them out because they would all attack me. And I actually found out afterwards that they were known for carrying knives, as well as known for spiking people. So what I kind of did, I was quite creative in how I went about it. I started like fraternizing with them. I like put my arm around one of them. I was like, "All right, buddy, how you doing?" And I was like, "Can I have a private word?" And I was like, I basically said to the guy, I was like, "Look, the bar staff are saying that you need to leave. I don't know why, blah blah." Yeah, I kind of like blagged my way through it, but I was being all friendly to them, and I'm like, I know it's a pain in the arse, isn't it? And basically the whole lot of them crowded around me, and they were like arguing with me and being like, "Oh, we've paid for drinks, blah blah blah, this that and the other." And then I was like, I kind of, again, I fraternized with them. I was being really nice, but I didn't show any fear. I was like kind of speaking to them at the same level. And I politely suggested to them, see if you guys don't leave now, bar staff are just gonna bar you and they're gonna call the police. But see if you leave now, I'll ensure you can come back any other day. It's all good. I'll sort you out and all that. So then they ended up like shaking my hand, hugging me and everything. Like, yeah, this guy's sound. We'll leave. We'll go somewhere else, right? So I managed to get. It took me about 25 minutes or something to convince them all, but I nicely and very politely got them all out. And then when they all left, about an hour later, one of the bar staff showed me a video on her phone, and there was a pub just up the road, just about 5 minutes away, and there was a massive brawl outside the pub, and a bunch of people got hospitalized and everything. And it was them guys that started it. So those guys that I kicked out of the bar I was working in, they went to a different pub and they caused a massive riot. And people ended up in hospital. Police like taped the place off. Everything. It was brutal. So I'm just like, see if I wasn't on that night, like if I wasn't there, I'm like, and I didn't manage to get them out. That's exactly what would have happened in the bar I was working in. So it's like, but it was so on edge. See, because again, there was about 3 or 4 of them. No, there was 4 guys and 1 woman in the group, right? And the 4 guys were quite big guys too, like scars on the faces and everything. They looked like right, dangerous dudes, right? So I was like, the whole time I was thinking to myself, if I do one thing wrong here, if I make one mistake, if I misjudge this situation, these guys are just going to set about me. I'll probably get stabbed to death. But I managed to get them out. And yeah, they went to another pub and ended up causing a big riot. It was crazy. So that was quite an interesting weekend. I also, There was an event I was working at, and some Palestine protesters showed up. That was quite interesting, but there wasn't many of them, and I think the rain scared them off. Aside from that, nothing particularly interesting has happened since. I'm a bit concerned about this weekend though, because there's like Halloween parties and that, and some football on too. So that bar I'm working at, there's going to be a lot of problems. And I'm assuming I'm going to be working with new people and all that. So yeah, it's going to be. I might not even survive this weekend. I'm not even joking, by the way. I might not. Like I would. I don't think I'd have survived last Saturday if I wasn't more tactful. You know. Such a great idea going to war when we can't deal with us. Yeah, go into what, sending our young men, our young most capable men over to the Middle East to get killed, while our streets are literally flooded with dangerous migrants raping our women and stuff. Yeah. Owen's that my slogan will, but probably not. He should make videos on that for free. Nordic, the best bouncer in Scotland. Yeah. Do you know what? I've actually like, I know I joke about it and all that, like, this doorman in Scotland, but like, the thing is, like, I actually have unironically gotten good feedback for my job as a bouncer. I've gotten good feedback. Like, see, everywhere I work, they ask me to work there again. They ask me back, and that's why I'm working all over the country, because there's a lot of venues that people don't want to work because they're too dangerous. Whereas, like, I seem to be able to, I seem to have a way of like keeping places safe when a lot of other people don't see. Because again, a lot of bouncers are like tough guys. They'll just go in and start a fight, throw someone out. I tend to be able to get people out without starting a fight. Like, again, that situation last weekend. Again, I was dealing with a gang of like scumbag drug dealers who literally just cause trouble everywhere they go. But because I was able to fraternize with them, and I was able to show like a kind of stoicism that a lot of people in that position wouldn't have been able to, I was able to get them out peacefully without any bloodshed in a situation where nobody was going to back me up. Absolutely nobody. And I think that's part of the reason why, like, all the feedback I've got for the job so far pretty much has been positive. Like never had that in a job before. It just seems to be a job I'm good at, you know. If China becomes more powerful than America, the world might be screwed. As many problems as America has, China will be worse. Yeah. Again, China's a communist empire. That's what it is, you know. You can always count on a corrupt British referee to F up your parlay. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, if you've bet on a decision and it's like the 12th round and Howard Foster just waves it off, he probably does it for his own parlay. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. We are constantly told about assimilation, yet I see Pakistani Afghans in the street with Palestine flags all the time, not to mention they make shops with Arabic letters. Yeah, they do. And they only hire their own people, and they only support their own people. They only support their own charities. They only support their own, like, institutions, but they're supposedly assimilating. It doesn't make any sense. Well, yeah, Parker could have had his shot at Usyk 2 years ago. He didn't push for it, so I've got no sympathy for him, you know? Not for Parker, anyway. Not to mention every African Asian demographic bringing their seething resentment towards the British for colonization with them. They don't even see themselves as British, but we're supposed to, yeah. Well, we're supposed to see them as British while they fly the Palestine flag. Exactly. I mean, I can't work that one out, can you? But I don't see them as British, and I never will. To be British, you have to be properly assimilated. Gonna watch you back a little later. Keep up the good work. God bless you. Yeah, same to you, man. God bless you. I find it more fun nowadays thinking past fantasy matches. Yeah, even that I'm just bored of now because it'll never happen. Yeah, Nordic's getting a reputation as a bouncer on school in the street. Yeah, I actually am getting a, like, unironically, like, without even joking, I actually am getting a reputation. But my reputation is being able to. It's not for being a tough guy. It's being able to deal with conflict, being able to calm people down, and be stoic, if you know what I mean, and to get people out the building peacefully without bloodshed. Like, even if it takes a bit longer, it's better than having a big ass riot, isn't it? You know, and possibly dying in the process, you know. They're British. If it's immigration built Britain, but African when it comes to reparations or anything bad. Selective identity, not something whites are able to do. We're just privileged and evil. Yeah, you're just born privileged and evil, no matter what you've ever done. That's how it is. I know you don't want to talk about boxing, but I'll end it with this. Wilder's open to a rematch with Parker. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Like let them fight 10 times. I won't watch a single one probably. Nordic got a free ticket and caved his head. No, I didn't get a free ticket. I got the wrong ticket. I paid for a return and he gave me a single. Or he gave me 2 singles instead of 2 returns, which I was going to cave his head in. I was having none of it, and he threatened to call the police like a little bitch, because he is a little bitch. I was seething about that for ages after that happened. But do you know what? Ironically, though, my missus actually did make a complaint officially because the guy robbed us, and she got a refund for it. It was me that paid, but she got the money because she put in she made the complaint, and they gave her the money basically that they owed us. So yeah, it worked out all right in the end, even though I was going to cave the guy's head in. I'd say Destiny. Well, I think you're saying that because Hassan's a Muslim, isn't he? Sounds like it to me. I mean, and if he's a Muslim, he might as well be a paedophile because Islam and paedophilia go hand in hand, If I saw Hassan in person, I'd probably end up going to jail because I'd flatten him. Mate, if I saw him, I'm not even kidding. If I saw him in person, I'd punch him so hard till that he stops breathing, and I'd keep punching him. I'm not even joking. I would expect anyone to do the same. Hassan needs to be jailed and cancel his hair loss tablets in prison. He must become the bold Turk nature intended him to be. His thirsty fangirls will disappear. Yeah. Hassan acted like his dog was causing his nature trouble, and it was just him moving on. No, he wanted his dog to be in the background of his live stream, so he put a shock collar on it, scared it to death, and if it moved, he shocked it. Again, anybody sees that guy in person, punch him so hard that he stops breathing, and then keep punching him. I'm not joking, I might just be angry, but that guy doesn't deserve to live. Do you know, it's fun until it's not fun. Being a bouncer is fun until you're surrounded with people who could kill you at any moment. Then it's not fun. Trust me. It can be fun sometimes. It's terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, of course. Yeah, a woman doing it. But again, it wasn't really her fault because it was her first shift. I sent her to the door. I didn't want her doing it. I'm not having a 19-year-old girl put herself in danger while I'm her supervisor. I'm not letting it happen. I just had her checking IDs. That was all I had her doing, Yep, going. And I had to, because, well, again, the other guy, the Pakistani guy, was useless. He wasn't going to do nothing. He had one job, and I told him to just watch a gate, and he couldn't do it, So, yeah, here's what it is. I was working myself, basically, They were just collecting a wage, as far as I'm concerned. Panels I've watched nowadays are just loud people talking over each other and not even wanting to have healthy debate, shouting. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is a lot of the time, and it's just annoying, because it's tiresome listening to that stuff, and it's not fun. You need protective equipment in your job. Yeah, you do. Yeah, but I don't have protective equipment, unfortunately. So again, I could just get murdered at any time. Like, do not be surprised if see next time you hear from me. Do not be surprised if this weekend I get seriously hurt. It could easily happen because that place that they want me to work is a dangerous place, and I don't have any backup. And it's not always going to go the way it went last weekend. Because again, when I got them out, they literally went to another place, caused a massive riot, and people ended up in hospital. The only reason they didn't do that to me was because I fraternized with them and I kind of blagged my way through it and managed to convince them to leave. That wouldn't always be the case, that won't always happen. One wrong move and you can get attacked, Foreigners say, I'm just as British as you, but call you white, privileged, oppressive, evil, sick of it. Thought we were the same, huh? Yeah, but they're only British when it suits you or when it suits them, when it suits their agenda. No, I get paid minimum wage, so I must be out of my mind. I'm literally putting myself in danger to work for minimum wage. But do you know what? I'd prefer it to sweeping the floors. I prefer it to working in a call center. Call me crazy, I do. Yeah, how's it going, man? God bless you. Good day, Nordic brother. Hope you're well, mate. Yeah, same to you, man. God bless. Best book you've ever read, Nordic, other than the Bible. My best fictional book, I'd say, is Lord of the Rings. Best fictional book, but the best like non-fiction book, the best like just book besides the Bible that's important and must read, I would say, is Mere Christianity. That's probably one of my favorite books ever. I would. Why would a 19-year-old girl be allowed to work as a bouncer? Hey, work. You're asking the wrong guy, mate. And why would a 19-year-old girl be sent to that venue for her first shift is the real concerning thing. Again, 10 minutes of her being in the building, I'm showing her around and a guy tries to hit on her. And I had to send her away to protect her, basically. Like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you have to deal with. She was basically in my care, I felt, and again, they sent me another guy who had no idea what he was doing. So it's like, and again, she didn't do a bad job, right? She worked on the door, checked IDs. Like the girl didn't actually do a bad job. But what I'm saying is she's still a 19-year-old girl. And if things kick off, I'm not calling her for backup because I'm not having something happen to her, then it being my fault, It's not a job for girls, basically, if you ask me. I don't care what anyone says, Call me old fashioned. I'm not having it. I'm not having them be in that position and put in danger. I'm heading off now. Yeah, God bless you, man. Cheers. Yeah, I could buy my own stuff. I could buy a stab proof vest or something, I guess, Yeah. Why hasn't Hassan been arrested and thrown in prison on charges of terrorism or incitement for terrorism? If I said the things he said, I'd be in prison already. I would. Yeah, you can. Yeah, but the company I work for, you get paid the exact same no matter what. Yeah, how's it going? Yeah, Nordic daddy. Yeah, I'm basically babysitting two people who are supposed to be there for backup. Yeah, she was. She was better than the Pakistani. Like the Pakistani guy I was working with. Don't get me wrong. I've worked with Pakistanis before, who are good at the job. That guy wasn't. Literally, I put him in like the back part of the venue. All I did was I told him to watch a gate, make sure no one goes through it, and he couldn't even do that. So, yeah, I'm definitely not relying on him for backup. Also, when I escorted those guys out, I asked him to follow me, so I had a witness. I didn't think he was going to be useful as backup. I just wanted him there as a witness in case anything happened, and he didn't follow me. He just stood there and did nothing. So, yeah, it's a situation. See, I feel like when I work as a bouncer, depending on where I work, see, if I've got backup, if I know I've got backup, if I know I've got people like when I work at an event or something, or if I work in a bar where there's a squad of guys who know what they're doing, I feel like I can do the job. Like I can tell people, right, you're leaving, that's it, and I can just get them out. I can like throw them out and without any drama, because I know if they do anything, I'm going to have a squad of guys who'll jump in and sort them out and like restrain them. But see, at that venue, I don't have that. I don't have that. Even if there's someone else on me, it's not someone who can really handle themselves. So I have to be very, very cautious, very, very careful with what I'm doing, and I have to watch my back. Basically that's how it is. So, but I've gotten better at that as I've done the job. Again, I've only had like 2 or 3 fights on the job, and only one of them like fully came to blows. So I've been able to get people out without bloodshed in most cases. It's not always possible, but in most cases, I'm able to do it. Please buy some protective. Keep yourself safe on the job. You don't know what can happen. God forbid. Yeah, thanks, man. But yeah, again, that's it's something I'm considering. I'm considering even wearing like hard knuckle gloves or something like that, or maybe sneaking a tire iron up my wrist in case I have to deal with a knife. And wearing again like a bulletproof vest or a stab-proof vest or something just to help out, because I think it would be wise, particularly in that venue. It just depends where you work. Again, some places you work, it's fine. You don't really have to deal with that. Other places you do. Just depends. It's one of them. But yeah, it's Kind of losing my train of thought now. What was I talking about before I started talking about that? Yeah, I was talking about Hassan. Like the thing with Hassan again. Do you reckon he's actually a government plant though? Like, because he must be. Because again, like when the Queen died, and he made that video dancing and celebrating, and again, he's calling for the shooting of numerous politicians and stuff, and political activists, and like just openly like inciting violence against them. If anybody else did that, they would literally be arrested and charged with incitement to terrorism. Like they would be I, it really does make you wonder if he is like again another Mossad plant or something like that, or someone with like really high level connections. I procrastinate too much and don't buy things for myself when I need them. Don't make the same mistakes I do. It took me like 2 years to finally buy a hat to keep me warm at work. Yeah, yeah, I'm like that as well. I really should. I should be more careful in like getting myself the right equipment and all that. Because you never know. But sometimes I worry like if I wear a stab-proof vest, would it slow me down or would it make me too hot or something like that? That might make the job harder. I don't know. As you've got to weigh all these options up, haven't you? It'd be good if I could get one of them bloody, them mithril vests like Frodo has in Lord of the Rings. That'd be awesome because it's like light as a feather, but hard as dragon scales, and no blade can pierce it. That'd be awesome. But nah, that's a difficult thing, you know. I bet Howard Foster would be a great bouncer. He'd start any fight that went off. Yeah, he'd stop any fight that went off within seconds. He'd just wave his arms. No, that's it. Done. Fight would be over. Yeah. He actually kind of looks like the kind of guy you'd see as a bouncer, doesn't he? I was working at a casino recently, and one of the bouncers I was working with, massive guy. This guy was huge. He reminded me of that guy in The Godfather, the Luca Brasi. It was like that guy, and that big scary looking guy. He reminded me of him. And when I didn't even really have to do anything. Because see, when people would show up to the door, he'd be like, Northern 8 guys. Like, that big deep voice, and he would just scare people away. Like, oh, okay. He's like, I'm going to say no. Go away. Northern 8. It's no happening. Like this guy had not only was he such a big guy, he had like a proper commanding voice as well. One of these guys you just wouldn't mess with. It was that I could use that guy in other places. I tell you, young girl bouncer is just a liability. Yeah. True. Again, that's why. I mean, don't get me wrong. Having a female bouncer can work in some cases because you could use them to check the woman's bathrooms or to search a woman for contraband or whatever. But aside from that, I don't see a use for them personally, except maybe like calming people down and diffusing a situation. But you'd rather it be someone who's bigger and stronger and can handle themselves, Another joke I used to make, polygamy has its perks. Imagine 2 cups of tea at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, just send them both to make you a cup or 2 sandwiches, isn't it? While I remember who wins the race between the genius man, the genius woman, and Santa Claus. The genius men, why? Because the other 2 don't exist. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? I bet Howard Foster will be a great bouncer. Oh yeah, I already read that, didn't I? Do you know, here's a joke I heard recently I thought was quite funny. So a guy walks into a bar. No, it's a guy goes to a fancy dress party, butt naked, with his wife strapped to his back. And the guy at the party says to him, "What have you come as?" He's like, "I've come as a snail." And he says, "Who's that on your back?" And he says, "That's Michelle." I thought that was a good one. That's kind of a stupid one, but I thought it was quite funny. I like a female bouncer bouncing on my Yeah. Yeah, they're all right in that regard, isn't it? Yeah. Bouncing on my what. Do you know there's a couple of things that women have that are pretty bouncy that I do like, I must admit. There's two nice little bouncy things I like to look at sometimes, I need a new laptop, but we'll probably end up getting it in like 15 years. I always find a reason to delay. And you did about the vest. Years end up passing, yeah. It's like see with a laptop, like my previous laptop was literally hanging off, like the one I used to stream with. Like the top part was hanging on by one side, and like if you were to just hold it up, like it would literally, there was like one little wire holding the two halves of the laptop together, and I had it like that for about a year before I went to buy a new one. Before I bought this one, it's crazy, isn't it? Again, it's anything to just anything not to spend a bit of money, isn't it? That's what it's like. Crazy. I'm gonna get some iron brew out the fridge. I'll be back in a second. I've got a thingy in there, a glass bottle. One sec. Changed my mind. I'm actually gonna have a cup of tea instead. Daz's comment about 2 cups of teas has made me want a cup of tea. So I've put the kettle on. That's what you can probably hear in the background now. So I will be with you guys once I've made it. 1 second. Okay. So I actually had to make a cup of chamomile tea because it turns out I'm out of tea bags. I forgot I used my last one earlier at the start of the stream. Yep, I had to make chamomile tea instead, which is all right. I like that. It's good for my throat. A lot of women smuggle. A lot of women used to smuggle pills in their bras. Yeah, they do. Yeah, because they know no one will search there. Again, I'm not allowed to search women in most places, not unless I'm working at an event and there's a high terror threat or something. That's the only situation there. Need a new laptop. Wait for work. Holidays. Want to enjoy my holiday next year. Ain't that bad actually. It gets worse. Wait for holidays. Cycle repeat till officially stops working. Yeah, till officially it breaks. You literally can't use it anymore, and then you have to absolutely get one. Like you got no choice. That's how it is. That's actually quite nice. Do you know chamomile tea? It's one of them things that a lot of people drink it only when they've got a cold or something because it opens your airways and that. But like, I actually like the taste of it. Like, I'd actually just drink chamomile tea just because I like it. I actually don't mind it at all, and you don't need milk with it. So yeah, I should write a book on procrastination when I have time. Yeah, you'll get around to it at some point. At some point, you'll find the time to make it. But until then, you'll just keep thinking about. I'm kind of like that with videos, aren't I? One day I'm gonna make this video, and then like 3 months later, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably get around to making that video. About a year and a half later, it comes out. Our 100-meter runner friend used to have a couple of bouncers, bigger bouncers than the Ashes. Yeah, she was compelling viewing. Oh, that's funny. Who searches them? A woman, but yeah, a woman bouncer can search women in a lot of cases, but a male bouncer can't. That's why a lot of venues want to have, like nightclubs, for example. A lot of them will have one woman bouncer because it means, again, you can check the woman's toilets, and because we're supposedly not allowed in them, and you can search women if need be. So yeah. What do you think of the Tolkien theory that the ring represents capital? Given the economic ability to control others parallels the ring's ability to bring others under your sway. I don't really agree with that. I've heard that before. I think more than that, it represents sin, right? Because you can tempt a person with sin, like the original sin of Adam and Eve, rather than following God's statutes, they were offered the fruit of forbidden knowledge, and they accepted it without question, and basically became fallen, essentially. And if you look at the story of the Silmarillion, for example, that's what happened to the elves. They became, Feanor created the Silmarils, and the elven race essentially went into a perpetual decline from that point on, and they lost basically their angelic Maiar powers. Sauron attempted to use the rings of power literally to create a hive mind between him and the ruling factions of the free peoples of Middle Earth. So it, again, that's why I said in my video, the ring. If you guys didn't see that video, go and watch it. Probably one of my best videos I've ever made, if I do say so myself. That was all done entirely off the top of my head one day. But yeah, what was I saying? It basically represents temporal power, right? And again, that the ring is a metaphor for that power. Okay, and an institution is corrupted, and that institution literally controls the hearts and minds of the people. Like if you look at the ring wraiths, they were the kings of men. They were great kings of men. They were blinded by greed and essentially a thirst for power over their own respective kingdoms. Sauron offered them that, and then they became slave to his will, kind of like demonic possessed individuals become slaves to their sin. That's kind of how it is. Again, temporal power, sin, original sin kind of thing. There's a lot of ways you can interpret it, but yeah, I don't think it represents capital, because I mean, you could say that the gold kind of represents capital, because Tolkien also came up with an idea called dragon sickness, which is essentially where, the dwarves, one of the effects that the rings of power had on the dwarves was it enhanced their stubbornness and their overall greed and their desire for gold. So they dug deeper and deeper to the point where they essentially cut themselves off from the world, destroyed a lot of the old alliances, and ultimately they were destroyed by serpents, right? They were destroyed by dragons. Like the vast majority of the dwarven race was exterminated by dragons, and it's because dragons have a similar mindset to the dwarves in the sense that they crave wealth, they crave money, they crave capital essentially, and even though that there's nothing they can really do with it, they still want it, they still crave it. Like dragons have a longing for gold, and it's like they're drawn to gold. So it's when the dwarves dig too greedily and too deep, they will essentially summon evil upon themselves. Like the dragon kind of represents that greed, and of course, anybody can be corrupted by greed. It's human nature, so that's another interesting analogy you can make. But I don't think the ring itself is an allegory for capital. No. Again, it makes more sense to me that it's temporal power, but not just the concept of temporal power. Bad temporal power, a corruption of that temporal power, because again, Tolkien himself was in favor of a monarchy, more specifically, a Catholic monarchy. That was what he was in favor of. He wanted that, which is something that a lot of people conveniently overlook. Have you talked to customers before? Yeah, all the time. I have regular conversations with customers all the time, and sometimes they're quite interesting, you know. Will any scale of remigration happen? Any scale at all? Possibly, but it won't be enough, will it? Like, it won't be enough to make any real difference. Bouncers bouncing all over the place, you know, bouncing up and down, bouncing your head off a wall, you know. Be interesting to see what happens if we just cut off the benefits and hotels. Hundreds and hundreds of yeah, if they have to work for a living, and you know, if they're not allowed to steal, if they're held accountable for their actions, then yeah, it'll be interesting to see them all just bugger off and go somewhere else. But it's not just for that reason. It's also for the standard of living here is just better in general than what they get in their own shithole countries, you know? That can't be denied. Where was I? Not all of it's just a small section of cash for them, yeah. Soylenials think Game of Thrones is better than Lord of the Rings because a few graphics sexy. Well, see, this is another thing, and this could be a video in its own right. Another thing a lot of people don't realize about George R.R. Martin and about Game of Thrones was literally meant as a deconstruction, a quote-unquote deconstruction of Lord of the Rings, right? So George R.R. Martin was a degenerate, like, horrible, sexual, deviant, pervert, weirdo, right? And he took offense with Lord of the Rings because it promoted family values, it promoted tradition, culture, it was opposed to modernity, things of that nature. So he decided to make his own quote unquote counter culture, right? He wanted to make his own fantasy world that was the opposite of Tolkien in every way, which is why everything in Game of Thrones, literally everything, is a bastardization of Tolkien's work. It's a corruption. It's a quote unquote deconstruction. It's kind of like how, if you look at a writer like Alan Moore, for example, his work, every single thing that guy ever made, he was another pervert who had like a rape fetish. Everything he ever made was essentially a deconstruction of Steve Ditko, who was a conservative comic writer. You know, the guy who came up with Spider-Man and some other things, right? And Mr. A. Pretty much everything Alan Moore did was an attempt at a counterculture, and that was the same with Game of Thrones and George R.R. Martin. So that's why, if you look at Lord of the Rings again, there's no sex, there's no profanity, there's no degeneracy at all. It's family values, culture, tradition. It's opposed to modernity, things of that nature. Game of Thrones takes place in a similar fantastical universe, but it promotes all that. It's filled with incest, graphic sex scenes, race mixing, things of that nature. It's filled with like brutal, like horrific murder scenes. It's very, very gory. Like Game of Thrones is just it's just so juvenile and so horrible. And if you look at the characters in Game of Thrones, like Jon Snow, for example, he is a direct deconstruction of Aragorn. All right, who is the kind of a the prophesized king of Gondor and Arnor, right? The one who himself becomes the essential temporal power of Middle Earth. Okay, basically, if you look at Game of Thrones, it was a contrived counter-revolution. It was supposed to be the anti-Tolkien, but in a sense, what George R.R. Martin did was inadvertently prove Tolkien right, in the sense that what Tolkien said, one of his most famous quotes was, "Evil cannot create; it can only corrupt." And that's exactly what George R.R. Martin's work is. It's a corruption of Tolkien's ideas. So he literally copies Tolkien's ideas, just like the Dark Lord Morgoth did to the Valar, you know, taking the elves and corrupting them and bastardizing them and making the orcs a corrupted evil version of what was already there. Like all of the evil, well, most of the evil anyway, all of it in depending on who you ask, in Tolkien's work is a corruption of something good, right? You look at the The Felbeasts are an affront to the Eagles. The Orcs are an affront to the Elves. The Trolls are an affront to the Ents. Things of that nature. I digress. In Game of Thrones, everything in that work is a deconstruction and an affront to Lord of the Rings. So that kind of proves Tolkien correct inadvertently, is that evil cannot create, it can only corrupt. Okay, and that's exactly what Game of Thrones is. It's literally a rip-off and a corruption of Lord of the Rings. But an attempt to deconstruct Lord of the Rings, it just proves Tolkien right, you know? And then what you ended up with was numerous rip-offs of Game of Thrones, which were all trying to be as edgy and as degenerate as possible, you know? Always being a regular tea guy. Love the procrastination gag, yeah. yeah, it's true, isn't it? I like tea as well, yeah. I do prefer regular tea, don't get me wrong. But I like chamomile tea as well. It's one of them things, again, most people that drink chamomile tea don't even know, like most people that drink it, what is that I'm trying to say? Most people that drink chamomile tea, it's literally if they've got a cold, you know, if they've got a cold, they want to clear their airways so that they can basically, man, this is stuck in my teeth, sorry. But like, if they've got a cold, they want to clear their sinuses and get rid of the symptoms of it and kind of manage it better so they can sleep and things like that. But basically, I like it. I actually like the taste of it. I actually find it calming. Like I think chamomile. I think chamomile actually does. It's one of them things when you drink it, it's easy to relax with. I don't know what it is exactly. It just seems to. It soothes your throat and your airwaves and things like that. You know. What you talk about with customers, anything they want to talk about. Like they usually ask me questions and I'll usually answer. You know. A lot of the time they ask you about the job, or you know, they'd ask you about procedures and things of that nature, or they just banter with you or flirt with you or things like that. You know, just anything really. And again, it's something you just because you're kind of the face of the company, so you got to be a good influence in that way. You know, will benefit system collapse eventually? Oh yeah, eventually, because again, there's going to be so many people where you just can't afford it. The country's going to go into debt. You know, it's already in debt. I mean, that's what's happened in America. America's trillions of dollars in debt. So, of course, it's going to happen here. We have an even higher alarming rate of mass immigration given the size of the country, you know. I disagree. I think they still prefer it here. Because again, oh, she's home. Even if things were free, they would still I'm losing my train of thought, man. They would still prefer the general culture here and standard of living because again, there's the church here. There's lots of charity. There's people are just nicer in general than what they would be over in an Islamic state. So I think they'd probably stay here. Yeah, a battle of who's the Labour will blame Conservatives and Conservatives will blame Labour. Really, they're both to blame, you know. Have you got Gen Z fatigue? I think everybody's got bloody Gen Z fatigue. Although, to be fair, I've talked about this before. I actually have more of a personal problem with boomers. I think boomers are worse. In my opinion, they're worse than Gen Z. Boomers are just horrible, you know. Because it's a generation of man-children who think they're tough, you know. That's what they are, basically. I wish I could wipe my memory and rewatch the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The near ending scene where Samwise and Frodo are saved by the Eagles is almost too beautiful. Music and the white sky, too beautiful and heavenly. Yeah, I love that scene. Like the Eagles are actually some of my favorite characters. The Eagles are based as well. See, if you read the books, you'll know why. Like the Eagles are actually based and they can talk and everything, and they're cool. Yeah, that's probably the perfect movie trilogy, Lord of the Rings. I don't think they'll ever top it. Like, those movies came out in the early 2000s, and like, I think movies back then were at their absolute peak. I don't think they've ever gotten better. I don't think special effects have got any better. I don't think writing's got any better. I don't think it really can. Like, sometimes when you make something so good, there's not really any point revisiting it because it's never going to get better. Like, you were never going to make a fantasy movie series that was anywhere near as good as Lord of the Rings. It was never going to happen. You were never going to make like you were never going to make a platformer as good as Spyro the Dragon. So why even try? You know, it's that kind of thing. It's the same situation. Sometimes things peak and they never get any better. Okay, so and sometimes trying to make them better is just clinging on to something that's not there. You know, the music which Tolkien invented, the language of his heavenly sounding. I hate Game of Thrones author for reasons you mentioned. Always felt it was underwhelming. Traditionalism, but couldn't explain. Yeah, Game of Thrones, like I said, it's a deconstruction of Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Martin was a sexual deviant, a degenerate, a guy who hated culture. He hated Europeans. He hated history. He hated Christianity, and he hated anything good and moral. He was a big fat, like, evil reprobate, just a degenerate and a pervert and a creep. And you can see that from his books. That's why his books are so evil and so depressing and so, like, negative. Everything about that guy and his work is just negative, you know. He was the absolute opposite of Tolkien, and in an attempt to try to undermine Tolkien and deconstruct his work, he ended up unironically he ended up inadvertently proving Tolkien right, because the evil can't create their own works. Again, when Tolkien made Lord of the Rings, he wasn't deconstructing anything. He was just making his own fantasy universe that he came up with. But George R. R. Martin was trying to make something to push some sort of agenda that was the anti-Tolkien, you know, that was saying the opposite of what Tolkien said, to basically bastardize and corrupt Tolkien's work. But you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who, you know, is into English literature and things like that, that thinks that George R. R. Martin is a better writer than Tolkien. You very rarely will you come across anybody who thinks that, you know. Nick Fuentes says he's a fan of Game of Thrones. We're cool. Like, as if I needed another reason to not like Nick Fuentes. As if I needed another reason. I mean, come on. I mean, look, and again, Nick Fuentes calling someone gay is a bit ironic, if you ask me. You know, him calling anything gay is ironic. The one I can't get my head around is, why don't these refugees stay and fight for their freedom like people have throughout history? I wouldn't want them in our army. I know that much. Yeah, they're a bunch of weaklings. That's why they run away. My country gets invaded. What, you think I'm going to run away like a pussy? No. I'm going to stay and protect it. You know, I'll fight to the death for my people, for my family. I'm not going to run like a little bitch and leave them. Yeah, why are they seeking refuge? Like, not all of them are in a war, from a war-torn country anyway. So what are they seeking refuge from? They're seeking refuge from their own shithole countries. You okay? What's up? What's the matter? Of course you're allowed. I didn't say you weren't. Okay. Yes. You will sit there and you will be quiet. Why not? Come and sit. Why? Because I said so. No. Fine, go in the other room then. I don't care. How was it anyway? Good. All right. Well, Nordic, have you heard of a knife sleeve? It's supposed to be very light, durable sleeve on your arm that stops a knife slide. Do you know what? That's actually not a bad idea. That's actually not a bad idea. I need to look into that, because again, if it doesn't slow down my movement at all, then it'll be very useful. Again, that's always been my concern about having a stab-proof vest. That's always been my concern about, is it might slow me down. But if it's something I can just slip into my sleeves and protect my wrists, that'll be based. That'll be all right. Never watched Game of Thrones. Gonna stick with Lord of the Rings. But yeah. I've never watched Game of Thrones either. I know what it's about. I know it's a corruption of Tolkien's work, and I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in deconstructions. I'd rather see the original. When the benefits collapse when they go home, then I don't know. Here in the US, food stamps benefits are about to expire because of the government shutdown. About to be riots. It's going to be ugly, yeah. Yeah, you take away the food stamps and there's going to be a lot of looting. There's going to be a lot of BLM, isn't there? Burn, loot, and murder. That's going to be happening a lot, isn't it? I heard apparently it costs over £8 million a day for the benefits given to the illegal immigrants. Not sure how true it is though. Do you know that wouldn't surprise me? Because how many illegal immigrants come in every year? There's like thousands and thousands. I don't even know the number. It's probably a lot more than they say. All of them are getting their like £70 a week at least benefit. They're getting housing benefit. Again, like food stamp kind of thing. The British equivalent of that. If they've got kids, they get child benefit, free bus passes, in some cases free transport, and they're out begging and stealing and doing all sorts of horrible things. So yeah, boomer bums. Yeah, true. I can't stand boomers. Some of the migrants want to go home, weirdly enough. Send them home then. Send them home. Is this all a punishment from God? It could be, It could be. Peter Rabbit's siblings got chamomile tea at the end of Beatrice Potter's story. Peter got an early bath for that. Mr. McGregor's garden nightmare. Yeah, I like chamomile tea. I do. I think it's underrated. Again, it's a nice relaxing thing to drink. I think I don't mind it at all. A small number of people have become very rich out of this hotel racket. Something very few people mention, classic cronyism. I noticed, a lot of these Just Eat cyclists who are and Deliveroo and whatnot, who are working illegally in this country, a lot of them live at those migrant hotels. You go past them and you see the bicycles chained up outside the hotel with the big Just Eat bag, and then they steal the food. See if you order something off Just Eat, very good chance it's going to get stolen, and you might not even get your money back, and nothing you can do about it because these delivery cyclists are unregistered, undocumented immigrants, so you can't really find out who they are or nothing. Hey Nordic, I was ready to stop gambling if Wardley lost, but he won, and now I got more money to it. Yeah, good for you, man. It was a smart bet. I did say before, him having the home advantage, puncher's chance, all that good stuff. It's a smart bet. You had good odds on Wardley by knockout. I wouldn't have doubted that was good odds. Yeah, these traitors taking traitor government's money while they live in a lavish life at the expense of everyone else rather than improve the government bails you out. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, take the emperor's gold and accept all of their statutes and don't fight against it, even though it's to the complete detriment of society. Boomers got free XYZ and sit here telling the young they can't have the same. A very entitled generation of people who overestimate their own abilities, for sure. Yeah, and they look down on younger generations, even though younger generations are having to deal with all their bad choices. Again, never forget that the reason things are as bad as they are is because of the boomers. They allowed it to get as bad. They allowed society to become the mess that it's become. They sat back and did nothing, while our rights were, like our right to bear arms, our right to personal sovereignty, and all that good stuff was taken away from us. And there was obviously we weren't alive at the time. There's nothing we could do about it, but we're doing something about it now. And these same boomers are out there calling us fascists and fighting against us, supporting the establishment, telling us we're all lazy and entitled. That's literally what they were, Yeah. Stream invaded. She came home. Yeah, I should have asked her to come on the stream. I told her to sit down and chill, but no, she wanted to go in there. She doesn't like being in the room when I stream, so yeah, she wanted to go in the bedroom. Oh well, I'll go and harass her when I'm done with this. Maybe slap her around a bit. I'm kidding. I'm only joking. I don't do that, by the way. I'm not an abusive partner for anybody who can't take a joke, you know. Crazy how leftists celebrated Kirk's murder or downplayed Hollywood scum, couldn't even make a statement condemning it. Simply said he was a heckling mean. He was mean, but he wasn't even mean. That's the thing. Charlie never even said anything mean or anybody. He was like one of the nicest people you'll ever hear speak. And he was always respectful to literally everybody, you know. Yeah, boomers say Gen Z again. Boomers bought their house for like 30 grand. Like they could buy like a 4-bedroom house for that, and they tell us we have it easy. You know, while they were able, you know, working a relatively easy job. You know, mostly fighting age men. Yeah, they sent fighting age men to die in the war. It does, yeah. You have a chamomile tea bedtime. It can help you sleep. True. Evening, Mrs. Nordic. Yeah, she's in the room now. They blame us because it's easier to blame than to take responsibility. Yeah, true. Exactly. To take responsibility for their short-sightedness and their greed and their stupidity that we're dealing with, you know. Boomers never had to deal with a multicultural hellhole. Some minorities were around, but there was barely any trouble. Yeah, barely any trouble, because if the minority did cause trouble, they'd get their head kicked in. So they had to assimilate. Now there's so many of them, all they do is segregate. And while these stupid boomer liberals that are going to die soon are calling us racist and fascist for, you know, having the balls that they never had because they had everything so easy. I don't respect boomers. I think boomers ruined this country. They ruined our future, and we've got to clean up their mess. You know, they were weak men. And it's like they say, weak men make hard times. Hard times make strong men. And yeah, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Politics is just two sides deciding how quickly the whites get ethnically cleansed, left wing, illegal and legal, welcome, right wing, as long as the trillion followers come legally. Yeah. I don't care if they're here legally or not. Like, at this point in time, there's that much immigration. It should just be stopped at this point in time. It's a small country. We don't need any more. We don't need your tech support. We don't need your doctors and lawyers. We don't need them. We don't need any of them. The left threw a tantrum and rioted when George Floyd was memed into oblivion. Yeah. Yeah, a crackhead died of an overdose in police custody, and an American man went to jail. An innocent police officer went to jail for no reason. That should have been the reason for the outrage. Is the guy getting sent to jail for no reason? That should have caused outrage, but sadly it didn't. You know, are some minorities more likely to assimilate? E.g., true. Yeah, true. They are. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of them have, but that's not the point at this point. At this point, there's just too many, and it's a very, very small country by comparison to some, you know. Probably it's looking that way, isn't it? Hardly any of them have good jobs. Yeah, a lot of the boomers. But again, in the days of the boomers, you could have like some like manufacturing job. Yeah, some of them are useless. Like you could have a manufacturing job and still support a family of 5 in a 4-bedroom house on one wage, because the economy was better. There wasn't all these useless taxes and things like that. You know, you could actually support a family back then. Difficult to support a family now. Even if you're just a couple with one kid, most of your wages are gone in your first rent and utilities payment. You know, why your name George Floyd? Well, can you not see George Floyd in my profile picture? Spit an image of him, right? Will reform actually do remigrate when they win? Probably. Although they'll at least probably try it, but I suspect before too long they'll just direct people back to the stupid Tory party, like Nigel Farage and his ilk always do. The boomers were too busy getting on the Thatcherite gravy train, then took the Blairite continuation of it, took advantage of the housing bubble. They're the reason so many young people can't afford a house. Yep. Absolutely. But while telling us, oh, we worked so hard and this generation is lazy and blah, blah, blah. Look, this generation isn't lazy. This generation just realizes that it doesn't matter how hard they work. They're never going to own anything and they're never going to succeed in life. because the boomers ruined society. They made society bad. And we're dealing with it, But it's people like me, as edgy 90s kids, we're the ones that are trying to fix society and make it better and actually push for a better standard of living for our people. And they hate us for it, Assimilation is easier when they're just other kinds of Northern European due to them being physically blending in better. Yeah, like it's probably easier for like a Polak to immigrate into this country and sort it out, Yeah, George Floyd in his true form. Nobody will fail for the Tory grift again. I doubt it. What about the Ben Habib party? I know nothing about that, but I doubt people won't fall for the Tory grift. They always do. You can always trust normies to fall into the two-party system. You can always trust normies for that. Yeah, they'll let slightly fewer in and claim to have solved the problem. Instead of just closing the borders, having gunships on every dock and stopping all immigration, which would be easy to do since we live on an island. It's not easy to keep people off an island. Yeah, exactly. There's no excuse for letting any illegal migrant in. Literally just have a couple of gunships on every dock. Any illegal boat, undocumented boat that comes in, point a gun at them, bugger off. Go back where you came from. Oh, but it's dangerous. I don't care. I don't care. That's simple. Go away. No one invited you here. That's what they do in Hungary, and they don't have mass immigration. So what's the problem? Yeah. What Gen Z is doing is coping on the internet, being a groiper. What Gen Z is doing is going, Israel, the Jays and the tiny hats and the tunnelers and the juice and the Jays. That's all they're doing. They're not doing anything except pointing fingers at Israel and bitching and moaning, providing no solutions. There's not a pragmatic bone in their entire bodies, Back in the boomers' time, this country was 95% white. Assimilation was the norm. Reform is like an extension of boomer golf club, yeah. Again, people back then that were considered conservatives were basically just leftists. They just didn't realize it, because they didn't think that there would be hundreds of thousands of African migrants and all that coming into the country every year. They didn't think that there would be kids getting their dicks cut off and all that. That was the stuff of conspiracy theorists, crazy conspiracy theorists who think the sky's falling. They would have mocked us, stupid boomers, while all that stuff was happening and was being promoted in political circles, while the satanic elite was pushing that stuff out there, Black African preachers in the UK seem based. The left people harass them, probably the most stereotype in their head. Instead of 1 billion immigrants, we will get 99.99 million with the Conservatives. Hungary has actually recently opened the borders to Iceland also. Look it up. Well, I heard a couple of disturbing things about Iceland. Apparently, Iceland exterminated Down syndrome. And the reason they did that was because they basically forced everybody who had a Down syndrome baby to murder the child. Apparently, if they did a scan and found that your child might have Down syndrome, they got aborted. So the Icelandic government celebrated that. Now, you can't tell me that is not an act of evil. You can't tell me that's not an act of evil. Seriously. Just exterminating babies because they have Down syndrome or because they might have Down syndrome. So yeah, I used to like Iceland. I don't anymore, There was a white guy called Ian Tomlinson who, I heard about that, got clubbed to death by an overzealous cop at the G8 15 years ago. The cop was acquitted, funnily enough, no riots. Yeah, if it was a black guy, there would have been riots. Maybe if he was an orc, there would have been. Your avatar is actually George Floyd's girlfriend. Yeah, that's George Floyd's missus. Mrs. George Floyd. Iceland, too cold, yeah. They sell nice frozen pizzas, though, don't they? They need to up the white birth rate, yeah. And stop murdering kids because they might have Down syndrome. Yeah, there was no riots when Charlie Kirk died, was there? Innocent man killed on a college campus for his political views. Not a single riot, not a single store got looted. Gee, I wonder why. It did, society didn't all of a sudden turn into Planet of the Apes all of a sudden, did it? after the war in Ukraine is over, they'll be flooded with 1 trillion foreigners. They'll make up for the labor shortage. They'll lose no matter what. Yeah, they've already lost. Look, Ukraine lost before the war even started. That country was already a degenerate shithole ran by scumbags like Zelensky. You know, it was filled with human trafficking. You know, marriage rates and divorce rates and things like that were at an all-time low. There was a serious lack of patriotism in general. I mean, why do you think most Ukrainians don't even want to live there? It was a mess. It didn't meet any of the standards for joining NATO, for example. And you know, the war with Russia was inevitable. It was festering for years and years. But there shouldn't have been a war. Like, Ukraine and Russia should be allied. But it was a proxy war started by the World Economic Forum, in my opinion. You know. Yeah, they can up the birth rate and the right patients, or the patients will run out eventually. We need a 5-year freeze on permanent residency and pretty much all immigration. Limited work permits, a tiny number of actual. I don't think there should be any refugees at all. I don't think refugee status should be offered to anybody. I don't think there should be any immigration whatsoever. And again, work permits. You know, if you're over here with a work permit, fair enough. But as soon as that permit runs out, you leave, and no negotiation on that whatsoever. You know, you said Nick isn't about productive conversation. How many of his debates have you seen? Well, again, I'm not saying that his views aren't productive. What I'm saying is he's become a bit of a caricature. He's become a bit of a joke. When you think of Nick Fuentes, what do you think of? Do you think of his debates? Do you think of the things he says? Do you think of his views on things? Or do you think about him being a closet gay, Jew-hating, contrarian? Like that's just what you think of when you think of Nick Fuentes. He's done nothing but drive a wedge between people on the right. Okay, he's again. When was the last time you heard Nick Fuentes actually do anything productive? Like what are the fruits of his labor? If you look at the people who follow him, it's a bunch of idiots on the internet calling themselves groypers, like the kind of people you would see on 4chan or Reddit or something. You know, they're not people that are even particularly politically aware. You know, that's my point. There's too much infighting on the right, and Nick Fuentes is part of that. You know. He's become a bit of a ridiculous figure. Putin is flooding Russia with Asiatic ethnic Muslims. Refugees, silly concept. Why can't other Muslim countries take them? Why do they end up in Sweden? Exactly. Why can't Muslim refugees or refugees from Muslim countries go to the nearest country? The nearest country that's not at war. You know, why not? Because they won't have them. So why should we have them? You know. Yeah, the only immigration in the UK should be essential. It's white Africans. Well, I mean, white Africans are some of the most persecuted people on the planet in South Africa. So if there's any argument at all for immigration, maybe you could make the argument for them. But even that, I don't think anyone should be allowed in who's not British, you know. I think most of the George Floyd rioters just used it as an excuse to smash some windows and take some free stuff. Oh, a lot of them did. A lot of them did, no doubt about it. Any excuse. Last time I went to Iceland, I managed to get locked in one of the chest freezers, the one with the seafood in it. Yeah. You ever got an Iceland delivery? We've got them a few times. Got to wear 2 knife sleeves for it to work, yeah. Yeah, because then I can block knife attacks with my wrists. That's a good idea. Yeah, let the UAE take them in. I mean, that's a rich country, rich in oil. Let them take them in. Yeah, why Africans in South Africa have got like balls of steel, ain't they, to stay there with all that going on. But yeah, on a side note, I'm gonna stop the live now because I've been going for quite a while. So yeah, I don't want to go for 5 hours like I did last time. That was a crazy long stream. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for stopping by, guys. God bless each and every one of you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.